Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for April 9th, 2018. The possible executive session is not possible tonight. We're going to postpone that until April 23rd. So that's scratched from item number 1 for the agenda. Steve, I think we have public participation.
We do. We have one person signed in, Amy Purcell of 53, is that Eunice Circle? Okay.
Amy, welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to address the Board of Selectmen tonight. I'm speaking because tonight Dr. Smith is presenting the proposed fiscal year 2019 school department budget. Last month, I spoke at the school committee's public budget hearing to talk about some of the experiences and concerns of parents with students on IEPs for language-based learning disabilities. Joined by over a dozen parents, I shared that our collective experience is a difficult one, full of battles, thousands of dollars in legal expenses, and most upsettingly, children who are anxious and scared, wondering why their educational experience is different from many of their peers. Unfortunately, oftentimes this ends in sending our children out of district in order to provide the best possible services for them. These out-of-district placement costs Wakefield hundreds of thousands of dollars each year and long and difficult days for the families. The truth is, for the vast majority, there is no reason a child with a language-based learning disability should be forced out of district when these services can absolutely be readily provided in Wakefield, as they are in countless surrounding communities. At the public budget hearing, I asked the school committee and school administration to consider the needs of children with language-based learning disabilities in Wakefield and consider budgeting additional resources into the district intervention line of the school department budget in order to provide these children with the critical services needed, especially at the Galvin. While I am upset that no additional money was allocated into this line, I am happy that Dr. Smith, as a result of parental advocacy, has committed to using $75,000 that will be in this line in the fiscal year 2019 budget to hire at least one reading intervention specialist to help these students. It is truly critically needed. It is my hope that this commitment is not viewed as the end of addressing these concerns, but rather as a beginning point to larger reform. To end, I come before the Board of Selectmen tonight to ask each of you to keep this a priority as you study and evaluate school budgets. It is important to remember that adding these services in Wakefield does not simply benefit special education students, but also any child who may be struggling with reading or has a disability not yet identified. This is especially important at the elementary levels, where early identification of learning disabilities is crucial to properly educating and remediating the child. This truly benefits all students. Financially, this allows for families who wish to remain in district to either stay or return, potentially saving the district hundreds of thousands of dollars in out-of-district tuition and transportation expenses, which can be used for services and programs right here in Wakefield. Most importantly, this keeps our children close to home, which in these crazy times is where we all want them. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Steve, there's no one else for public participation? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the regular board minutes on March 26, 2018?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. That bell meant that was unanimous.
Bell meant I can't figure out the phone.
The next point is 4 on the agenda for appointments. First one is for building inspector, vacation replacement, James DeCola. I don't know if there's any comments or questions from the board. This is pretty standard fare, as is the next item. For vacation replacements, these are hand-picked people from I believe Jack Roberto would have approved. So I'm not sure if there's any questions or anyone have any concerns on James DeCola as the building inspector vacation replacement. None heard? None noted?
This is standard, Steve.
This is
Yes.
standard because whenever the building inspector, and I think in this case the plumbing and
Yes.
gas inspectors away, statutorily, we need to make inspections within a certain period of time, 72 hours in most cases. So these just cover, we've been doing this for years when they're away, so. Mr. DeCola is the building inspector currently retired, from North Reading, has a world of experience. And Mr. Ellis is the current plumbing and gas in Malden. Jack's very comfortable with them, so I suggest we move along and get them through.
Okay, so without any comments from the board, the building inspector vacation replacement, James DeCola, can I have a motion to approve him?
So moved. Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Another unanimous. Second, the plumbing gas inspector vacation replacement, Joseph Ellis, next on our list. Any questions or concerns from the board? Again, that's the same as Steve just mentioned. It's the same replacement philosophy we've had. Hearing none, just a motion to approve Joseph Ellis as the plumbing gas inspector vacation replacement.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That's two unanimous, just to let you know that we're on a roll
minutes
here.
as well.
Okay, the minutes too. Okay, fifth on the list for agenda for today is license and permits. We have a one-day liquor license for Amy Wall for May 6, 2018, from 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. at the Marical Civic Center. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? That's 4. Okay, now on the presentation action items, the approval of the warrant.
Do that first.
Okay,
That came in after we.
Oh, okay.
This is Mr. Stinson, could come up.
okay, Mr. Stinson. Okay, so we have a, we have a change in the agenda. So the presentation action item is the food drive, Phillip Public Works Trust. And we have Mr. Stinson and
And Maureen Miller from the Food.
Maureen Miller, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, jump right in, Rick, and
Okay,
Maureen,
thank you.
whatever.
The Department of Public Works will be working on a food drive in May during National Public Works Week. It's a program that's being run by the New England chapter of the American Public Works Association, and to get as many communities to participate and support the various food banks. A lot of them are doing regional food bank drives. Ours will be specifically for Wakefield. And I've been talking with Maureen Miller, and we've worked on that, and we're looking forward to it, and we'd love to have your support and participation if you desired. And I think it'll be very successful. National Public Works Week is May 21st through the 25th, and we have 2 things planned. Right now, we're looking for a 3rd and 4th that we have potential for, but the 2 we have planned right now is drop off at Town Hall during the week, and the second will be, we'll take appointments and go pick up food from people that can't get out and bring it to Town Hall. So, and with that, do you have any comments?
Well,
or-
Rick came to me with this idea, and I thought it was terrific. It's one more way to get food into our doors. So, yeah, I think it's a great idea. I hope it's very successful this year and many years to come. And I thank you for that. And I want to thank the board, too, for the support of the pantry. All of you have been big supporters of the pantry. And the community in general is a great supporter of the pantry. We support about 600 families in need, and we couldn't do it without support like this and support from you guys. So thank you.
Don't you turn the $1 into $3?
$1 to $4.
Remember that, Brian?
$4.
Right, $4.
Yeah, any dollar given, we can get $4.
Which is
for
terrific.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing you'll see around town, I think you all got a copy of it in your package, but you'll see this poster here that will be at Town Hall and in other places around town that we're gonna put up, so.
You can drop the food off any of the 4 days. Is that what
Any
you're
of the
saying?
4, yeah, we did 4 because we want to get it to the food pantry on Friday.
Okay.
So that's why we did 4 out of the 5 days that week. And looks like right now, the pickup day will be Thursday of that week.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the board?
Just one quick, thank you, Maureen, for everything you did for the town of Wakefield and the food pantry. There's also a drop box in the basement of the Civic Center that people can drop off donations as well.
Okay, we'll put that on the list, that's great.
I too would like to thank you for all of your work. I know that you work tirelessly on this, and I appreciate that, as does the town. It's a group effort, certainly. And if you can convert $1 into $4, then I think we should have you handling all of our town budgets. Is that right with you, Steve?
Absolutely. I've learned not to argue with Maureen Miller.
Excellent point.
Well, I'm sure Betsy would be happy. She's been an advocate for a long time.
Maureen?
No, it's great, and I'm assuming we'll get this out on social media and our website, and
Already is.
awesome, great, thank you.
All right, great.
Maureen, Rick, thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming in.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Right, so next item is the warrant. We can do all the items at one time, or do you want to go through?
I think that the key, the first one is we want to approve the warrant in general, the 25 articles that
Okay.
this board has been through most of them. There's a few more that we'll go over briefly tonight. But they're from many different disciplines. We did not have any citizen articles this year. We did have articles from different committees. You have the warrant in your package. I think there's some very exciting things on there and some good things as we move forward. So Tom Mullen will approve it for all of the Oxford commas, Mr. Falvey and what have you, but I think we're pretty much all set on that. So if we could get a motion to approve the warrant, we will have that posted well ahead of time and then go through some of the articles later on.
Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the articles in general? The 25 articles, and then we'll go through the next couple items.
I move we approve the warrant as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bless you. Next, we have the sale of tax title property at 28 Redfield Road.
Yes, 28 Redfield Road, Mr. Chairman. The board will remember that this was in front of the board a while ago. We had gone out with a minimum bid. This is a small piece of land with a small structure dwelling on it right now that has frontage in Reading, and the house and the rest of the lot is in Wakefield. Kind of when you go past down Parker Road, almost you actually drive into Reading to get there. And we went out to bid the first time with a minimum bid, and no one bid on it, so the board decided to, let's go back out and bid again, which we did. Well, we should say, we did receive a bid before for $100,000, which was way under what we were looking for a minimum bid. We went out without a minimum bid and received two bids on it. The high bid was $151,000. Property is to be used as a single-family home. There's really not much else you can do to it. It's great to get these back on the tax rolls. So I would recommend that we do approve the high bid of $151,000, which is to a first-time home buyer, young woman. I think she's in the audience tonight, Kara Mead, which some of us know the family from Wakefield. So nice to keep someone in Wakefield too.
Any questions or concerns from the board? We did speak about this a couple times in the past. $151,000 is what's on the table, I guess, for the offer.
I move
Brian?
we approve the sale at $151,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's a win-win all the way around.
Win-win. Yeah,
great.
it's great.
Great. And Tom Mullen
Good
will
luck
be
with it.
in contact with you. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was easy.
You can stay, there's a whole bunch of other stuff to talk about.
Gotta get
Thank
back
you. The next sale of tax title property is 138 New Salem Street.
Yes,
Right
138 New Salem, you drive by it every
Every
day. Peter,
day.
you want to handle it? Go ahead.
Well, just, yeah, it's on the intersection of Salem and New Salem, and whether I'm walking the dogs or whatever I'm doing, I see it every day, and it certainly isn't much land there. There's a building structure on it that needs a lot of work, or maybe it should come down. So there's, I think, 4,000 square feet, last I remember, was the number. So there's not much to it in regards to the town can't utilize this property, as far as I can see, my humble opinion. But,
Yeah, we did, just so everyone knows, when we look at tax title property, our office sends a letter to every department in town that may have an interest in land, whether it's DPW, whether it's conservation, whether it's the building, to make sure we don't have a use for it ourselves, because that would be kind of counterproductive to sell a property maybe we have a use for. This is an instance where the abutter actually was the one bidder on it. All that can really be done is you can probably fix up this garage and use it and take care of an eyesore in the neighborhood. The abutter is very, very excited about it, and offered $12,000 to fix something right next to our property. This will not create a bigger lot, can't be used to create a subdivision or anything like that. Those were the stipulations we put in it. So I would suggest that, every now and then these things happen, and it seems to me this would be a good use of, and I recommend this one as well.
okay. So if I could have a motion to sell the property for the $12,000, unless there's questions or concerns, but,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Christine.
Fix that up right now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
There's a lot of positive things going on tonight, as well as the Pink concert. Hi, Ann.
Apologize for
No.
coming from nationals, so.
Yes, no, welcome. So next we have the letter regarding ballot question, number C. And anyone have any particular concerns or questions on that ballot question?
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes, you may jump in.
Just so the letter did go out.
Yes.
10 days ago, and again, in the packet, I did receive input from Anne, Maureen, and Tony. I want to thank you guys for your input. And as the board knows, I was asked to draft this a few meetings ago. And so now it's drafted and it's here for you guys to talk about.
Does anyone have any comments? We've all looked at it for a while.
I'm going to start by moving, we approve the letter, just for discussion.
Second?
Okay.
Could always change it, but get the discussion rolling, and then, may I speak on my motion, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's great, so, I think it was well done, and I really, whether or not I like the extrapolation of this to groups beyond gender issues. Certainly, gender is at the core of this, but you really captured the notion that we're sending a signal to everybody that we care, and we're taking steps to make sure that, as I like to say, that we don't just have focus on quality of life in Wakefield, but equality of life. And taking a step like this, small, large changes starts with small things that are done locally, and I think this is it's a great move, and I think that sending out the letter is smart, so people know where this board stands, or at least I don't want to speak for the whole board, but those of us who support it, and all for it. Keep moving forward, onward and upward.
Any other comments or concerns? Ed?
I don't believe that the Board of Selectmen, in its official capacity, should be in the business of writing advocacy letters on any ballot issue. It has nothing to do with this particular issue. It has everything to do with the sort of precedent that this potentially sets. To my understanding, this is not a precedent that has previously been established by the board. I think that anyone who wants to advocate a position relative to a ballot question on this board is welcome to do that. I think that the board, when we have a ballot question, is not in the position of advocacy. I think we've done our job by putting this issue before the voters. I'll remind everyone that back when this issue came up, I actually made the motion that then brought this matter before a town meeting that ultimately resulted in it being added onto this ballot. So I am absolutely cognizant of the fact that this is an issue before this town. That being said, I don't think that we should be advocating. The people will decide this in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from tomorrow. And I do not feel comfortable with setting this kind of precedent, and I don't think that this is our role. As a selectman, I did what I needed to do. Other selectmen and selectwomen did the same in terms of presenting this issue before the voters, and now it's for them to decide. And I think it's our time to step back now and let them do just that and let the process work through.
Ann?
Yeah.
Yep.
I utterly disagree, respectfully, with Ed, utterly. I think we have done something in the past. I think we all, as a board, or the board, I mean with the Galvin or the garage, something.
Yeah, I think the garage may have adopted, some sort of
Yeah, as a
resolution that
board.
we all supported, because it really wasn't a matter that was to be decided by this board, but we had supported the sale of the land,
Right.
in that deal. So
And just as we advocated for a position and publicized a position for the garage, believing to a person that was pushing this town forward and it was good for this town, I think that advocating for the name change is absolutely good for this town and pushing it forward. If Ed doesn't want to sign his name, we'll take Ed off. I still want to sign it as a member of the Board of Selectmen, though. If that, Ann McGonigal Santos, Board of Selectmen. I officially, I want to designate that. So I think it's an important position. I don't think it's something we take lightly at all, but it's something that we as a board should agree to push forward.
just add.
Tony, do you have anything first? Or? Maureen, do you have anything? Nothing? Okay. Brian?
I just, Ed's comments are interesting to me. Maybe you do have to be careful. I think, when you're a political body, I would agree. If there's any solace in it, we are talking about the name of our board, and I think people are probably interested in what we think about it. I'm going to go in, should I change the name of that board? But what do they think? And I realize we took a vote, but I'm not sure everybody pays attention to every vote we take either. So, I wish they did. But so I'm a fan of it. And to Ann's point, hey, if there's something that we think is right for the town, I'm here to make things happen, not to wait for things to happen. If anybody asks me why I joined the Board of Selectmen, it's always been, I love the ZBA, but you're in receipt mode. When things come to you, you get to act on them. Here we get to take action. And I think if we think something's right, let's scream it from the rooftops, especially if people might be looking for guidance or wondering where we stand. So it's a small town, and I think political advocacy is really what we're all here for. We've got to stand up and speak for what we think is right. I think we would probably be happy sending a letter if we're going off to our state delegation saying we need more highway funds or our fair share of Chapter 70 or education funds or whatever's out there. I think we'd all join, and I think we have written letters before from this board advocating and making clear where we stand, and I think doing it here is consistent with that. So, there's I'm not interested in being quiet. So,
Okay.
so.
Ed?
I think that anyone on the board that wants to write a letter to the editor is free to do that, and you can express your opinion and your position on that. And I think that's your right, and I think you should do that if that's what you want to do. I think there's a distinction between, say, Chapter 70 funding and road funding. For one, neither of them is on the ballot. Those aren't ballot questions. And I think, two, those are also not controversial issues, potentially. And people have different positions on this. Many people want the name changed, many people don't. And I think if we're looking to be a community that's inclusive, we need to be respectful of everyone's opinions, and not just the opinions that certain people may share. And so I think that part of what makes this board important is governing, but then presenting these matters before the people to ultimately vote on. And I think we've done our job. You'll remember that if this matter did not come up when it did back, with my motion, then it would have been, I think Maureen had said, like a year and a half or thereabouts out from now before we would have had this issue before.
Someone would have made the motion.
through charter review. But I'm just saying with respect to, we acted as a board in order to put this issue, and I'll say we collectively, as a board, to put this issue before the voters to ultimately decide. I have a comfort level with the voters deciding this. I don't have a comfort level with a body of 7 renaming itself. And I think that there's nothing wrong with having the people decide this issue, and however they fall on
Does
it.
this change whether the people decide it? Because, man, if the people just voted the way we said, this job would be way easier. We'd have a garage downtown, and life would be wonderful. So I'm pretty sure they don't vote the way we suggest they do. So I'm not sure we take it out of their hands. So I guess if you don't think we should be changing the name, just say that and we'll move on. Or if you think we should, then
We can take your name off it, that's
To be
fine.
clear, this has nothing to do with the name and everything to do about what this represents. And I don't think it's appropriate for a board to be writing advocacy letters to the editor on ballot questions. I don't care what the question is. I don't think it's appropriate. So for me, fundamentally, the name is absolutely inconsequential in my mind to this discussion. It's more a matter of process. And I don't like the fact that a board is advocating on a ballot question. I think that's not what a board should be doing. I think the board should take the steps necessary to put a question onto the ballot when appropriate, as we have done. I think from that point forward, then let the voters then pick up and then vote. And we're talking about 2 weeks from today. I think this has been an issue that's been in the media and been social media, widely discussed. It was at town meeting previously. So I think enough people are tuned into it. But I fundamentally do not think that this board should be, in its official capacity, writing advocacy letters on ballot issues.
And I disagree with you. I respect where you're coming from. I understand that. I do think we have the right, as a board, to advocate for ballot questions that we feel strongly about, especially a ballot question like this. So we can take your name off it. That's a simple way. If you want to remove your name, and if other people want to remove their name, that's fine. I think it's important that it comes from some of us in the official capacity.
Why can you not just as easily, Ann?
Because I'm disagreeing with you.
Sign your name to it as Ann
No.
Santos.
I don't want to. I want to sign it as Ann McGonigal Santos, member of the Board of Selectmen.
Well, you can do that independent of the
No.
vote here.
No. The motion is, I want to do it as this board.
Yeah,
That's
the letter's
fine.
written on Board of Selectmen letterhead
Yeah.
with all of our names on the masthead. So, and that's,
Okay, just to
That-
interrupt one sec, Tony's been trying to jump in. Sorry, didn't grab you. Sorry.
We're the governing body of this town. The 7 of us, we are the governing body. We oversee. Steve is the CEO, but Steve answers to all of us. It's important we show a united front for this. It's what we want to call ourselves. It's what the people want to be referred to as officially called. So it's important we be united on this. And Ed, I understand where you're coming from, but we need to just, let the people will decide. And I think I kind of have an idea how they will decide. But we need to just show a united front to the voters and move on. Look at downtown, what's going on, and with the Civic Center and everything else, all the other problems in town. We need to put this behind us and move on.
Okay.
And I'm voting yes.
Okay, so just to refresh everyone's memory, we actually had a 7-0 vote to put this up to the ballot last fall. And the town meeting, I think, was probably 80-20, maybe, percent-wise.
Probably more.
Maybe
Probably
85-15.
more,
Okay,
yeah.
so it was pretty high percentage. And then, so I think we have done our due diligence by putting it in front of the people and now having it as a vote. If we're going to agree to disagree, it sounds like maybe what we should do is what you've been mentioning. Maybe we should put it on individually. We want to put down. Okay, so.
You can keep talking.
Well, no, that's all right. No, that's all right. No, I saw you shaking your head. So I think the main thing is that I don't know if we're going to get beyond, if we're not going to have a 7-0 vote, again, to do the letter, then, I mean, we can't vote to have, we can't have a Board of Selectmen logo, I don't think, Steve, right? Correct? If we don't have,
Sure.
okay, so just have this.
I don't think the logo will show up anyway. This will be, it'll be a letter to the editor, so.
That's true, too.
Yeah.
All right, so,
sorry.
no, that's okay, jump in,
I
Brian.
could ask a question.
Yeah.
You're suggesting that's it's limited distribution of this is what will go to the item, or?
No, I'm just
Could
saying
be
that as a
publicly
letter, they
available.
probably will print a letter, like a letter, there's not any,
Right, but it will go over in this format.
Yeah.
Right? So. Okay. Just, I'm comfortable taking a vote, and I always respect the vote of the board, and even when I'm on the wrong side of it, and if we want to, take a vote and send this off, I'm all for it.
Okay, so we also could just say, we'll have a letter and have whoever wants to sign it as well, I guess. Does that make sense? It's because I don't think we're gonna get beyond
But is it
We don't
signed
wanna-
just by the Board of Selectmen, or does it have all our names?
individual
too?
names.
I can do whatever the board wants.
Right, so we can adjust that to whatever fits everyone's motion in particular. Does that make sense instead of, I don't think we want to rehash this for another 3 days or anything, so it's, unless someone else has another idea or another, Sherry, do you have any ideas?
No comment.
I don't
If there's
think,
any-
I
Yeah,
don't
sure.
think that we can have a letter signed from the board that isn't a 7-0 vote. We don't even have one board member here tonight. And I am just fundamentally opposed to advocating on any issue, as I've said. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with this name change issue.
Right.
That's my issue is fundamentally, I don't want to see this board doing that. So I don't need someone writing on my behalf. I don't need someone speaking on my behalf. I don't know what Paul's position is on this. He's obviously not here right now, but we don't have
Sure.
a unanimous vote.
So, and I just want to add, I fundamentally disagree with you. I think our power as a board and our unity as a board is we're going to take positions on things. And this is the only ballot in April. There's a lot coming on the ballot in November on state elections, on national elections. And I hope as a newer member to this board that we as a board weigh in on those issues.
So you expect us as a board to weigh in on national ballot questions?
On state issues, ballot questions, I do. I'll probably
Could
come
affect
back to the
our
board, probably at the next meeting about the transgender vote that's on the ballot, that I think we as a board, that other towns have done it, that we as a town should say we support a vote yes. Yeah, I think other towns have done it, and I think it's something that as a Board of Selectmen, it's why I'm here. It's my opinion, and I want to share my opinion with people in town.
Tom, do you have, just to get another opinion down here, Tom, do you have any opinions on this process, just since you have a good mind for these action items?
Well, legally, the one thing you have to avoid when you're talking about advocacy concerning a ballot question is you can't spend town money on it. You as a board and you as board members always have the right to express yourselves. So here, we're not spending any money, we're not going to make a private mailing to every residence. There was such a mailing, but that was done pursuant to statute, and it was not a work of advocacy. As for whether the board can take a position with less than a unanimous vote, I have to respectfully disagree. I think they can. The board speaks only through its recorded votes, and a majority of the board can take a position on anything. In this case, I don't see a real difference between your board taking a vote and it being less than unanimous on the one hand, and your board just circulating a letter and having such members sign as want to sign.
Okay, so really you're back to who wants to, excuse me, have the letter and then, okay, so, well, we have two different opinions. So Ed's opinion is that we really can't do this as a board.
He just disagrees. I mean, we can do it. 100% we can do
Everything we
it. He
vote
doesn't
on,
want to do it.
We vote on things.
It's very
and
different.
It's either, something to zero or some smaller number to a lesser number. And it's a majority vote. That's how we work on everything we do. I'm not trying to, let's just level the playing field there, or set the table, whatever, little euphemism I want to use here. But that's how we work. So if we said, by a majority, we adopt some, very significant change in this town, or we just agreed to sell that land by a 4-3 vote, the Board of Selectmen will have acted to sell the land. So the Board of Selectmen can act to communicate this to the paper. Now, the question becomes a personal one. do we want to, Ed's not comfortable doing it, do we want to put it in as this is the Board of Selectmen's vote, and this is what we want to communicate, even though Ed doesn't agree, or do we want to just, have it be signed by the members of the Board of Selectmen who support it? And I'd put that up for discussion, if I may.
If Ed's uncomfortable, I don't have a problem with just having the rest of us add our name with member of the Board of Selectmen following our name. Not as, I'm supporting it as a member of the Board of Selectmen. I mean, I guess it's up to you at this point, Ed, whether you want it just to come from the board, or would you rather have our names on it?
I think that anytime there's an advocacy issue like this, if it's members of the board who certainly have a right to write a letter to the editor, that should be done offline and not in these proceedings. I just don't think that this is.
So that's fine, so the rest of us will put our name to it, and members of the Board of Selectmen following it, I would suggest, not just our names. And Paul can weigh in if he wants to add his name.
Why don't I have some thoughts here? What if we just put maybe started the letter out instead of as members of your Board of Selectmen, or maybe, the undersigned members of your Board of Selectmen to start the letter off. The undersigned members of your Board of Selectmen work on myriad issues, blah, blah, blah. And maybe start it that way, and then sign, whoever's interested in having their name appear below it, put your name before it, and I think what will run right after is probably a letter from Ed saying that was a big mistake.
Again,
Right?
well, just to be clear,
no, I'm not
this-
even being flip.
no.
Like, I imagine, I would expect you to do that. In fact, I would hope that people would run it right afterwards if you had it.
My issue, again, has nothing to do with the name change and everything to
Yeah,
do
no,
about
I
the
think you
advocacy
should
of a
write a
board.
letter that
I don't
says
think
you
that
think
that's appropriate.
it's as a policy matter, we're out of line.
It's purely policy, that's what it is, and it will be the same thing the next time, it's suggested.
Okay. I mean, I think policy issue is a big deal. I really do. We voted 7-0 to do this, but I do agree with Ed on this. So, and if we voted right now, obviously it'd be 4-2. So it would still pass. But I think policy issue is a big deal. The name change is also a big deal, but I think it's a precedent. I guess it's been done before.
Absolutely.
On a vote, on a town vote.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but.
Yeah, so it's not precedential. It's actually the precedent says we've done it before.
Right.
And I'm not sure how
The
many times.
policy suggests we've done it before.
Right, right. And Steve, any other times this has happened probably? So you have a better memory for the last 8 years too? Just to get a little background.
On the marijuana question, I don't remember whether the board took a position or not, individual members did. I think that we may have taken a board position on the adoption of the local option meals tax. The board did sponsor something at town meeting, so they had, which was an adoption
Okay.
of state law, maybe a little different, but
So, I'm just gonna add one other thing.
Sure.
Let's just be careful, just because something might be first in time or somehow precedential, doesn't mean you don't do it either. It's a data point that maybe, if we had never done it before, point well taken, we've never ever done it before. There's lots of things we've never done before that we finally figure out, like moving to centralized polling. Never did it before, long overdue. So sometimes things change. So, but here, I think we have taken this kind of action before. And, for me, why do I come here if not to stand up for what I believe in?
Sure.
So,
Right,
that's
that's
all.
why we're
I'm
all
here.
here.
Let's do it. So.
Okay, so do you want to have a motion to probably change with an addendum on the,
I'll,
do you want to?
Whatever the right
propose
process is,
that,
I
or-
guess I'll amend my motion.
just procedurally, there was a
Sure.
motion
Yeah,
there
by
was,
Brian
okay.
to approve the letter, seconded by Ann. You may want to withdraw that and
Yeah, why don't I
change it.
withdraw? I'll withdraw
Okay.
my motion.
Withdraw the second, okay.
Okay, so, and then do you want a new motion, new addendum for this? Do you want to put forth?
Yeah, I move we adopt the text of the letter, the substance, starting with vote yes, or whatever that suggested headline is that we'll have on it, and that we write, "We, the undersigned members of your Board of Selectmen," and make conforming changes to the grammar there, and then sign it at the bottom. Maybe just put each names or write, yeah, just put everybody's names, who's interested in signing. And I guess I'll say, I will suggest we put at the bottom Ann's name, Maureen's name, my name, Tony's name, Peter's name.
I don't know. I think I'm going to stick with Ed on this. for
Okay.
the,
And it's probably fair to say, let's put Paul's name, subject to him just communicating to
Sure.
our town administrator whether he has comfort.
That sounds, do we need a vote on that, Steve?
Yeah.
We do need a vote,
And
okay.
Does it need a second first?
Okay.
Second.
Oh, there's one.
And all in favor?
Aye.
1, 2, 3.
Aye.
Show 4 to 2. Paul missing in action at the Pink concert. Hope he's okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Probably having more fun than we are.
No, this is fun. This is always fun. This is always fun. Okay.
All good.
Let's see, where are we at now?
You're doing so well.
I know, I lost my paper.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
you
here. Sorry.
declaring victory on your unanimous votes one after.
I know, well, that's, yeah, I helped screw that one up, okay. So, we have that, so, right, Board of Selectmen resolution, right. So, everyone's had a chance to read that in their packet. We have 2 of these in a row, this is good. This is great. So,
Again, I want to thank board members who weighed in on this. Tony, Maureen, and Ann all contacted me on this as well, and the acting chairman. When
Really?
we sat down. Well, when we sat down.
who didn't go to the Pink concert? Okay.
And Brian.
So,
Didn't go to the Pink concert.
comments, everyone's read this. Any particular,
This was somewhat modeled after another community near us, so.
right, Steve did this as well. Nice typing too, Steve. Tony, Brian, someone's got, I know someone has something over there.
You
John?
want me to start it again with the motion?
No,
we
Tony
approve?
had his hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to
Fire
add
away.
that it was at my suggestion that we add our members of Congress in there as well, because they do represent us in Washington.
Was there a motion?
No,
Yeah, I
no,
move we adopt the resolution and send it to those to whom it is addressed.
So,
Up.
yeah,
Maybe.
this is great. It's just not Seth Warren, it's Seth Moulton. And there's a reason he might not come to town, Steve,
okay.
at the bottom, last. Hey, that would be bad.
I wanted to see if, just if I can jump in, just on this, is there a way to put, I mean, we didn't mention anything about mental illness. I mean, there's other things that, maybe, can we expand on Steve's letter? Is that a possibility? I don't think this covers, this is a very broad issue. This is a very big issue. It's a national issue. And there's some great points in here. Steve did a great job. And I think we all respect everything he's typed up here. But I think that, like Tony's point, maybe adding people, adding the Congress. But also, I mean, I really think that mental illness really needs to be part of this if we move forward with this
Could it be included
somewhere.
where it says, but is it included with the clause reinstitute reasonable restrictions on who may seek to purchase or otherwise obtain firearms?
Yeah, I don't think it's, to me, it's not
What are you looking for?
lasering in. I
Yeah,
think
add-
there
add
should
a
be
clause.
some
Stop us from
mental.
guessing. Yeah,
It's
what-
just mental illness,
What?
yeah, it does engulf, it does take in some of Ann's comments there, but somehow adding in, more than reasonable is very ambiguous to me. So background checks, they have background checks, very stringent ones in Mass as well as many places in the country. But reasonable background checks on all individuals seeking to purchase firearms. If you, yeah, if you.
I just,
Sure.
when I read reasonable restrictions on who may seek to purchase or otherwise obtain firearms, for me, that's, we're talking about the usual classes of folks. In fact, in the Supreme Court case Heller that interpreted the Second Amendment to offer a personal protection of firearms, there's a long discussion about how to handle mentally ill and whether they should have firearms. So it's kind of within the forum of this debate, mental illness is front and center. So I don't know that it's missing just because it's not mentioned. If you want to add it or something, then, I have no issue with that, and, suggest language.
That's my only thought, just to make it a little more lasered in on, I think, a big part of the issue. But, Ed?
I think a few things with this idea of a resolution. My understanding is usually when we have resolutions, it's an issue that is almost universally supported, by and large. I think that this is a very complicated issue. First and foremost, I'm absolutely concerned about the safety of not just our school children here in town, but our residents in town. In looking at this, specifically where it talks about, be it resolved, this language is in essence saying that these are the answers to this problem, and I don't know that to be the case. And for example, the idea of banning assault weapons, that was done for 10 years. I've read a little bit on that in preparation for this. As I understand it, it didn't have, by most studies, most objective measures, it didn't have a discernible impact on reducing gun-related violence. So that troubles me, because we need to find better ways in which we can have a better control over, these incidents so that they diminish in number. But I don't know that this is the answer. I mean, I look at someone like, we have resources in town. I'll take, for example, Chief Smith. Chief Smith was in D.C. just a few weeks ago. Most people may not know this, but he met with Attorney General Sessions. He met with FBI Director Wray. He met with the Secretary of Homeland Security. He met with Homeland Security Advisor to the President and a couple of the President's advisors in his capacity within the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And that was important, and because he's on the ground, he's in the field, as are his officers, he's speaking with chiefs of police across the country, then they're able to communicate to the administration what the issues are as they see them, and in order to problem solve, troubleshoot, and find solutions. And that's, I think, from a community standpoint, I think that's how we have an impact on this issue. I don't want to presuppose that what is outlined here is the solve. It sounds like some of it may not be based upon some studies. I think some of it is. Bump stocks, don't know much about them, but it sounds like they're probably not a good idea, by almost any measure. But, anytime we have these types of votes, I feel like we often have, on anything, we have a presentation, there's information that's provided, and we're making an informed decision. And I know enough to know that I don't know enough about this issue, in which I can't advance a position on particular aspects of it. If this were a resolution of that the government needs to act to take all steps necessary, and I think a major step of all of this is the mental health piece, Peter. I think you raise an important point. The government needs to act. Perhaps that's more funding for mental health services. Perhaps that's more funding education relative to mental health. Earlier, being able to notice things earlier, detection, whatever the case might be. I know we referenced the shooter here in 2000. He was deeply mentally disturbed. He thought he was, he had killed Hitler, and there was Nazi references and all the rest. He was deeply mentally disturbed. And so I have, it gives me pause not to say, government, we want you to act, but to tell government, this is the way in which we think you need to act to solve this problem, because I don't think that I'm equipped to do that. But I do think that when we have resources like Chief Smith, who has the ear of the administration and is down there in D.C. doing the work, that's how we're going to affect the change that I think will actually be consequential here. And so that's where my reservation lies. If we were to be, in a generic sense, talk about the fact that we need to do more, and the government needs to act, and the government can't be silent, I'm fully in support of that. I just don't know what that pathway looks like, and I don't feel comfortable with some preconceived notions, because I think what has been tried or talked about so far hasn't necessarily worked. So I think we need to be broader in our understanding and our willingness to say, we don't know what all the answers are, but you damn well better do something.
Okay. Ian or Maureen, any down here? Any comments? And this one actually doesn't have a time table like the other. I think the other vote was more critical for 2 weeks before the voting. So this one, maybe we can bring it back to Steve, and maybe we can do another
I'd like to
Deputy
speak
Mayor.
on it.
Sure, Brian, go ahead.
Send it.
Send it as is?
I don't find that any senator or legislator of any ilk or the president or anybody is going to be hung up on the fact that the town of Wakefield asked for a specific. I think the import of the letter is, we want you to do things, we've got some ideas. I think your message is there, take action. I couldn't imagine for the life of me, not to get into a gun debate here, that banning assault weapons and bump stock devices, those they have some specificity, but they can only be good. I just can't imagine that even if they don't have the far-reaching impact we might expect or hope, it can only be good. So suggest it. And then the latter part of this is reasonable restrictions on who can obtain firearms and reasonable background checks for people looking for them. I think even the NRA tends to agree with that, if only because they have to or because they do agree. I don't know, but whatever the case is, send it. I think we're here to speak. We're here to show, again, the small steps we take locally are the things that make a difference nationally and even around the world. And I think let's get on this train right now that has a lot of momentum. It took a bunch of students to actually break through the glass that was over this whole thing, and I'm impressed with them. I want to do everything I can to line up behind them. I think there's not an idea in here that is bad. I think that just because we suggest it is not going to mean it comes into law. I'm not worried about that, and I'm subject to how this comes out. I'm pretty proud of us for taking a stand on a real issue that is a national one, but when we're really talking about that, it's a national issue that its impact, whenever it happens, is extremely and excruciatingly local. And we should, as the leaders of this town, I've found it more times before, people who are frustrated in our town, I think they ask things like, well, who can I go to? Who lets them do that? Or whatever, we're it. We've got to set the policy and the tone for the town, and we've got to step up and be leaders. And this is an issue that we can take a leadership position on, and I think we should send it. And guess what? Every so often, you send a communication out that might go a little further than you wanted it to, and hoping that you get 25% of it accepted. Whatever it is, the point of this letter is, we care about this in the town of Wakefield. We're not just sitting here idly waiting for the next attack on our kids or whatever. Hey, we've got, 4 ideas here. 2 of them are kind of specific, 2 of them are general. Message received. Wakefield cares. You are our legislators. You represent us. We're appealing to your mind and get you to vote in the right way and to consider these issues. And if you don't, maybe the people of Wakefield won't be interested in electing you the next time around. That's the whole import of this. That's really what we're saying. Hey, legislators, you should listen to us. We care. And if they don't, we will take note of it, right? Just like all of us, me included, who's up for re-election right now. I mean, I'm going to speak my mind. I think this is too important. I don't think we should wait. I think we should send it, as is. If you want to add something to it about mental health, fair point, and that's fine. Let's do it. Let's act. That's all.
I'm okay with everything. If we just get a little sentence in there or a couple words of mental illness, I just think that's important.
Add a clause. I
Okay.
agree with
I mean,
everything
'cause
Brian said.
I'm
We
sorry.
can work with you and add that in.
Okay, I'm okay with that. I'm certainly not going to compete with Brian on that one. That was good.
It's not a competition. I just, sometimes I just sit here and wonder, what do we do on this board?
No,
And
I
it's,
understand.
if it's not advancing things and making changes in the town and influencing things that we think are right,
Sure.
then what are we doing? Approving gifts to the library? We do it every week. $25 here, $50 there.
These are important votes.
Rubber stamping is not where my brain is put to its best use.
Okay,
So.
Tony.
I can't believe we're having this debate. We're the governing body of this town. We look like the gang that couldn't shoot straight. No pun intended, but come on, folks.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, I
It's a
think
quick
we're-
discussion
I think
from
we're
over here.
also, Tony, just at your point, I mean, I don't think it's quite that extreme. I think I just wanted to laser in on something that I find really critical that a lot of people skip over, and they don't think it's a big deal, and that's a
Steve will take
huge
care
thing.
of
Right, but no, I just want to make sure.
We are the governing body, but we also represent all of Wakefield. And all of Wakefield, this is a very controversial issue. And I think the notion that there's, unanimous, support of a particular aspect of this resolution is not accurate. I think that the idea that action needs to be taken is a pretty universally held belief. The question is, how do we get there? What does that action look like? And I don't know that to be the case. And as a representative of all of Wakefield and all of the townspeople, there are different positions. Half of our high schoolers walked out, in solidarity, but also half of our high schoolers stayed behind, and some of them were opposed to the walkout. I just think that we need to make sure that if we're going to be inclusive in this community, then we be inclusive, and we not disenfranchise others who may have a different approach to how to solve this problem. I think it's reasonable and appropriate for us to take the position that without question, something needs to be done. But when we're trying to prescribe what that is, I actually think we're limiting the focus versus broadening it. And I think it's stronger and more compelling for us as a town to say, look, we're not standing for this. We want something to be done. Something needs to be done. I don't like the idea of listing just certain things to be done because I think they become highly politically charged. I mean, I'm not saying that bump stocks are a good thing, but I don't know enough about them, But I do know that we cannot continue to have kids dying in our schools and kids feeling unsafe going to our schools. What steps the government needs to take to do that, I think is probably above my pay grade to know what that is. But to send the message clearly to the government that something needs to be done is a very different thing than to prescribing particular things that have a certain political slant to them. And that's where my concern lies if we're truly trying to represent in a resolution all the people in town. So what I would be asking for is that we be much broader in our language and not prescribe particular things that need to be done, but instead talk about the fact that anything and everything. I think, Peter, your point under mental health should be 5 sentences because that is such a huge underlying factor to so much of this as well as guns. I understand that, background checks, I get that. I'm fully endorse, those sorts of those items, but I don't think that we can have, I think to be powerful, we should be broad with this.
Well, I think at this stage, I don't think we can talk about this and gain any ground at this stage anymore unless someone had something else. We can vote. So are we voting just for this or with an addendum, possibly? I mean, because you mentioned Steve rewriting some, that would be satisfactory to me if we had some more.
Did I think I made a motion to
I think
send
you
it as
started.
is?
Okay.
You had a
So
motion.
that's a motion on the floor, so.
Second. Did you second it already, Tony?
I think I did.
Yeah.
We're talking about reinstituting reasonable background checks. I don't know those to not be in place. I don't know if they are or they're not. I mean, we have a police chief who was down to D.C. speaking with the administration. Has he even seen this? Has he weighed in on this? That's the
I
sort
don't
of.
think he has.
Would that make sense? I mean, use our resources. I don't know what the answers are, but I know that I don't know what they are.
Well, here's a question, though, just a quick question. So this one, I don't think it has an immediate timetable. It doesn't have to be today. What if it was 2 weeks? Would it make a big difference?
Yeah, maybe it'll
I mean,
be a
I'm just
shooting
saying that
next week.
I think
You
everyone
know,
has
let's
good
wait.
points. There's really a lot of good points. I mean, I just don't think this one has that urgency that the other one did. The other one had the urgency.
Can we run this by the police chief and get his input on it? I mean, he has the ear of.
And I have on
think
every one
that's-
of these points, and I know he agrees with me on every one of these points, in reinstituting reasonable background checks, maybe not for Massachusetts, but for other states, absolutely they need to reinstitute. I've talked to Chief Smith about these. My husband's a cop. He has a regular gun going up against assault weapons. Yes, I want them banned. If someone doesn't want to vote for me because of that, that's okay. I'm running, I represent all of Wakefield, but I'm sure some of my constituents, I have different views on certain things, and I've always been open and transparent about that. So I just, with something like this, oh my God, talking about nickel and diming it, just vote. I would suggest we have a second on the floor.
And by the way, there's nothing you do as an elected anybody that is supported by 100% of the people. So you've suggested that we need to get everybody's support, and this doesn't necessarily represent everybody in the town. But that's what democracy is. Which same as the last vote we had. We do things by majority, and the town has voted us to be its representatives, and this body is perhaps interested in communicating this. And if we do it and people don't like it, or enough of them don't like it, you don't get reelected. Right, and I'm happy to say that with my reelection hanging in the balance. All right, I'm pretty well. Look, I'm not pandering for votes. I'm just being me. Like, this is a big deal. What a nice opportunity for us to stand behind people, and I think on I won't call it the correct side of this. I don't think there are sides necessarily, but stand behind what I believe to be right. You said we've politicized it by suggesting. You said we're going to politicize it by adding these particular things. I'm an independent, very much on purpose. I am not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. I'm me, just like I'm being me right now. What you see is what you get. You said it's above your pay grade. I get paid $0 for what I do here. We're all volunteers. So those of us, if there is somebody above our pay grade, it's nobody. So guess what? It's us. I've done a ton of research into this myself. As I said, I've spent a lot of time reading the Supreme Court case to figure out how the hell did we get here to begin with. I'm very troubled by it, by the way, so I would go even further on this. I couldn't be more for it, and it's the right thing we do. And for the kids in our town and around the country that have spoken up, let's have some adults step up and say, yeah, we heard you. In fact, we're taking action, finally. And so let's do it, right? Why are we here? I just can't say it enough. Like, let's do it. Rock and roll. Let's communicate this and get it out there to as many people as we can. Get it out to the public, get it to the intended recipients. Let other towns find out that we did it, just like, we heard about this from another town and said that's a great idea. I think go for it. That's all. And I don't say go for it in a cavalier way. There's a lot of thought and a lot of years and a lot of interest. I talked to Steve a couple of years ago and I said, hey, Steve, my interest in being a selectman, I'm always looking to do more. And, is there something else? And I'd really love to find a way to tackle gun control, in Wakefield. And I was, as we looked into it, Steve reminded me that it's not a whole hell of a lot more in Massachusetts. We're pretty much there. We're like the gold standard in that. I still want to go further, but I want to provoke. I'd like to do something provoking that gets to the Supreme Court and reconsiders all of this. That's where I stand on it. But man, let's just take action. Message will be received that Wakefield cares about this, whether we add mental health or not, whether we put in or out something else. I think it's short and sweet as it is, and let's do it. So my motion stands.
So the motion, the second's on the floor, as is, without my mental health concern.
If you have a mental,
Can we add that in there?
What would
I'll
you
vote
like
for
to-
it. I'm not even sure how it best input. I was going to ask Steve on that tonight. I would just still like to put something in there about the mental health is a big concern. I think that's, to me, it's a big concern.
Yeah, I think it's a
agree with
major
what
concern.
I agree with what your points are, that we should get it out, but if we just spent, a few more minutes and just tied that in. Ed?
We have a chief of police that literally is at the forefront of this issue with the national government.
Sure.
Why we've not in any way looped him into this is beyond me. If you want to take action, let's be smart about it and effective. A letter versus the ear of an administration are very different
Did
things.
you not hear, though, when I said I've had a detailed discussion with him? So at least I have.
I spoke with the
about
chief.
all of these
I spoke with the
issues.
chief today, and I spoke with the chief today, and he said he's not spoken with anyone about this issue.
Not about the resolution, but about all
About gun
of these
control?
issues. Yes.
That's not
On
my
gun-
understanding.
Oh,
Well,
oh,
then-
sure.
Then Chief
Why-
must
why-
have forgotten
We could
the
do that.
conversation.
Why
Of
can't?
course we have.
Why can't we have him here as a part of this? Why didn't we have him here as a part of
Because I
this?
think it's just silly.
I have an answer to that.
So I
Okay.
think part of the resolution, as I have, part of the resolution was, we had more than half of the student body actually go out on that day. We have students, kids in our town who are asking what can be done. This was a response to them. This is also a response to our administration that let those students actually have a voice, right? As the administration and school committees sitting behind me, other towns did not have that same level of respect for their students. We have a bunch of students, including kids of people sitting around here that went to the rally. This is for them. It's not policy. I write policy for a living. This is not legislation. This is not a 500-piece legislation that we are giving to the people listed to ask them to write law. This is a resolution to say, we as a town support you doing something. And these are ideas that, and I'm going to disagree with you. I think when we did have a ban of assault weapon, there was nothing to what there is right now. And we can get the Attorney General, we can get other people here to get research, but I disagree with you that this will not, that these ideas will not lessen the incidences that are happening. And I don't want to wait 2 weeks. This happened a while ago. I don't want to wait 2 weeks. It's a message of how we are as a town, how welcoming and how safe and how we support our students and our administration and our school committee and all of us that are taking a stand on this.
Okay, just a quick question. So Steve, as we've been discussing, Steve has a little carrot moving some new words into the paragraph. Do you want to read that, Steve?
Yes.
Maybe we can come up with something tonight.
After you talk about reinstitute reasonable restrictions, comma, including expanded review of those suffering from mental illness. I don't know if that is where you wanted to go.
That would be
with this
fine
one.
with me.
Yeah, but I mean, put that after firearms in that sentence. Reinstate reasonable restrictions on who may seek to purchase or otherwise
Okay.
obtain firearms, including,
Suffering from mental illness.
yeah. Don't forget your Oxford
Maybe after
comma.
the second firearms.
After the first firearms, that, your sentence, reasonable restrictions on who may seek, maybe who, comma, including, including mental health, comma, may seek to purchase or otherwise. Define who is to include people suffering from
Is that okay?
mental health issues.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Ed,
I think we're missing the bigger issue here. The bigger issue isn't mental health in connection with being able to acquire a weapon. The issue is proactively addressing issues of mental health so that there aren't people with mental health issues that are not getting the treatment that they need that are then going out and seeking weapons. And so I think it's less to me an issue of, all right, making sure that someone with a mental illness is not able to procure a firearm legally. My issue is, fundamentally, at its core, we're not doing enough as a society and as a country to address matters of mental health that are then resulting, my belief, only my belief, in these incidents of people seeking out weapons. And that's really where the issue lies. And so I feel like we're glossing over that. I think that's kind of like a condition precedent, to use a legal term, in order that results in a lot of this gun violence. And I think when we don't segregate out and talk about the fact that mental health issue in a general sense, we need better funding, we need better treatment available to people. Those are the sorts of issues that are at the forefront. And from that flows the issue of guns. Of course, we need to make sure we have, sensible gun legislation. Of course, we need to have sensible background checks. I don't disagree with any of this.
And I don't
but-
disagree with you either.
Yeah, I
This
did, but I
resolution
don't
is
like.
separate to me.
I don't like the way that it is so tailored.
Don't
I think
vote
that's
for
my
it.
concern.
okay, just hold on one sec. Brian.
Hey,
So,
Nietzsche, I think, somebody can correct me, the perfect is the enemy of the good. This is not going to be perfect. We are not authoring and voting on legislation or bylaws for the town of Wakefield. We're not missing something here. We've added in mental health. Mental health is absolutely at the core of the gun debate. As I said, it was written in the Supreme Court case interpreting the Second Amendment how it is. They wrestled with it. So it is the core of this issue. Let's issue this. We've added our comment on mental health. I think it's appropriate to do that. Let's send it. Perfect is the enemy of the good. We're not passing legislation. We're saying we care. That's the message here. And let's just do it. Look at the last one. Let's do it and move on now at this point.
Right.
But
as
That's it.
Steve and I spoke earlier too in the week about this, a resolution is just that. It's not the end all. And I guess it's not going to be perfect by any means. And Ed has some great points. Everyone has good points. And this is an issue we all want to have resolved so that Dr. Smith and all the other folks in town that are in charge of the public school system don't have anything here, heaven forbid. I think at this stage, why don't we just vote? We have a motion.
point of order here.
Okay, go ahead.
If I may, I'd like to withdraw my motion just
Okay.
for clarity. And do we need to withdraw the second? Is that?
Probably the second too,
I would
right?
draw my second.
The second is withdrawn as well, and insert a new motion with the,
Okay.
as written with the language Mr. Mayo has suggested we insert.
Okay, so, and we have a
Second.
second, okay, and all in favor?
Can I just?
Oh, sure, hold on,
I
go
think
ahead.
we need to segregate out the mental health piece in the beginning of this before anything else talk about mental health funding and treatment.
You mean
because
placing the wording in the
placing-
front?
Talking about that, you can keep where it is, but it needs to be at the forefront of this, because I think that's the messaging, that if there's to be messaging to be sent, that to me is the most important messaging. And if anyone disagrees with that, please speak up. But I think at the forefront, it's mental health. Funding and treatment, everything
I
flows.
disagree. I think at the forefront, it's the guns that we have on the streets.
I disagree.
It's not a mental health resolution, it's a gun resolution.
Right. Yep.
You don't think that most of these incidents of gun violence are rooted in mental health issues?
We're not gonna debate gun
Well,
violence right
but you're
here.
trying to make this national political issue something that's very local, and so I'm trying to say
It is
that
local. It is local.
I'm trying to say that I think we should have the mental health component being
But the perfect is
separate
the
and
enemy
apart
of the
from
good
this.
right now. That's,
What's
I love that example.
What's wrong with adding that in though? Mental health funding and
Because
treatment.
I think it's muddying. This was originally about the guns. The students were walking out because of the guns and the ease of access of the guns. And of course, mental health is a part of it, and we're adding a clause. But I don't want to muddy it. I don't think. I think as is with the clause that Peter wanted. I'd say we call the vote. We could do another resolution on mental health. I mean, absolutely we could. And I agree with everything you're saying about it. But that's not what this resolution is intended to do.
But it's what it should be though. If we're actually trying to get to the core of the problem, then we have to deal with both. Mental health and guns are inextricably related. There's no question about that. No question about that. And the fact that we're going to only address half the issue makes no sense to me.
Well, I agree with that too. So what I think we should do, I think we almost should do another resolution later at this stage, though. I think we really need to probably take the vote, as Brian said, and probably move on, just to, because it's a huge issue to be able to debate it here. It's a national issue that is way more components, as a few of us have mentioned. It's not just guns, it's mental illness. There's so many factors involved. And I don't think, 5, 6 paragraphs on a resolution is going to resolve anything in particular, but at least it puts the right foot forward. My thoughts. So I think that we have a motion, we have a second. I think we should vote at this stage on what changes we added. So, all in favor of sending this out with that a little addendum?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so that's unanimous, actually, just to make sure everyone knows. Thank you. No, Ed voted for it, too.
No, that's good.
Oh, I just want to make sure everyone knew that. I mean, it's a big deal. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Okay.
You go
Sorry?
back to unanimous.
I went back to unanimous, yeah, thanks. Okay. We should stand up now for a break. Okay.
Jefferson for capital planning.
Oh, okay, right. So, okay, so now we're on E with the articles for annual town meeting, the Article 2 capital planning, which we have
Sean Jefferson.
Sean Majerison, right, thank you. Welcome.
Good to know all of you. Sean Majerison, Capital Planning Committee. Brought a PowerPoint slide for you to see.
Not that I don't like capital planning.
Sure. Okay. So I should start with, just so that you're all aware, we started with over $8 million worth of requests. It's a big difference there, a little zero. And we boiled it down to $2 million. The original guidance was $2.25 million, but obviously with the extra snow removal and such, we brought it down, or Steve recommended bringing us down to $2 million. So that's where we settled.
We also moved close to 400,000 into the DPW budget.
Correct.
So
Correct.
it's still an increase.
Yep, absolutely. Just the basic agenda. As you can see in the slides here, prior leases, fleet, facilities, roads, fields, parks, cemetery, put under one category, miscellaneous, information technology, and water sewer enterprise. So this year's capital outlay is a total of $1,997,644, of which we recommend spending $693,544 on prior leases, $582,000 to be spent on fleet items, $446,500 to be spent on facilities requests, $70,000 be spent on roads, $70,000 as well be spent on fields, parks, and cemetery requirements, and $75,000 on miscellaneous, as well as $60,000 be spent on IT leases this year, additional IT leases this year. In addition, it's recommended that we spend $281,732 on water and sewer outlay next year, which I'll detail a little later. For what it's worth, each year I come in and I give just the highlights. I don't go into each. We'd be here for a while if I went into each of them. So prior leases, $693,544. I think a key part here is it's down from $755,800 from last year. We're trying to drive that down lower and lower, but as we've tried to say each year, IT will always have a certain amount of leases. We find it to be the most the best way to invest the dollars because IT has a useful life, and it's usually either between 3 to 5 years. So if you keep that lease going 3 to 5 years, you rotate consistently and you keep up with technology. Next is fleet. The request for fleet items this year totaled $497,500. The highlights of the fleet items included are a new fire prevention SUV, which it was a 2002 model. The floor is rotted, the steering column, and it has steering column issues. A traffic and fire alarm bucket truck that the chief has been after for a couple of years now. It's 18 years old, also has rot, and has transmission and front end issues. And the bucket will not pass inspection. We also approved a chipper for the DPW. It has safety issues and is a primary piece of equipment for the forestry division. Again, this has been on the list for a couple of years now. A rototiller, which is 48 years old, and it was down for much of the season last year. We can't get parts anymore. And last but not least, 3 new police cruisers based on the replacement cycle. Relative to the police cruisers, the chief did ask for 2 or 3 more vehicles, and given we're trying to cut back, not cut back, but when we went to the $2.25 million down to 2, we had to find places to try and cut back. And one, there was a detective car that we did take out. It felt like the most prudent way to make sure that he at least had the 3 vehicles that he wanted. Next is facilities. Facilities request this year totaled $446,500, and the highlights approved with requests for the schools. We replaced 2 HVAC condensers at the high school and the cafeteria area. Continue to replace plexiglass windows at the high school as well and the Ewell. Upgrade a bathroom to support younger athletes at the Doyle. Replace a boiler controller called the Techman system that's not working properly. Replace the second boiler at the Greenwood School. And also at the Civic Center, which obviously you know that we gain revenue from Civic Center, replace the existing front doors to improve security and improve access, as well as replace some windows that are damaged and do not operate properly. At the library, we will retrofit the existing door to provide handicap access and rebuild the front retaining wall, which is crumbling and has become a safety hazard. Next is roads. Roads request this year $70,000. It primarily includes cemetery roadway improvements and parking lot improvements. Fields, parks, cemetery category, we have a total of $70,000. It includes putting money towards the creation of a cremation garden at the Forest Glade Cemetery, as well as funding the design of the new backstop for netting at the high school. And just a note there, to make sure that it's understood, it's funding to design the new backstop, not for the new backstop. Future construction funding will be required for this, and just so you know, we know there's a concern there with the balls flying back. The problem is, we don't really know what the plan is, how much it's gonna cost, so this is saying, okay, what do we need to do? Under miscellaneous, we have $75,000. Replace the dishwasher at the high school, which is 20 years old. And replace the oven at the Woodville School, which is 16 years old. And replace the stove at the Dole Bear, which is 20 years old. Basically, they've lived their lives. It's time to, all three need to be replaced, and they've been on the list for a while now. Information technology, we suggest spending another, $75,000 this year. Wait a minute, I have these out of order, my apologies. Information technology, spend an additional $60,000 this year in leases, and this includes what should be the last of projectors for the schools for some time. To be clear, there are some standard projectors and some interactive projectors. It also includes new phone systems for the Greenwood School, and it includes new cameras at various locations around the schools. Kind of relative to the theme of security as before, or as you're speaking of before. Water and sewer. The highlights for the water and sewer outlay this year include replacing the Farm Street odor control system, which is currently not operating correctly, as well as continuing the hydrant replacement program. And those are my slides. It's always fun to go from $8 million down to $2 million.
I want to thank the Capital Planning Committee. I think they must have met in like 5, 6, 7 marathon sessions to go through everything. Department heads are also brought in to plead their case, but nobody left happy because no one got what they wanted. But I think not too many years ago, this article was at about $500,000. So I think we've actually come a long way over the years.
It's interesting because I've been doing this for many years, and you always go into each season saying, okay, we have all this money, but we have all these requests, and you really hope that you can support everyone, with banner amounts of money, and at the end of the time you think, just didn't quite get there, and it's rewarding to know that you're going through all the homework and you're supporting the town and making sure you're vetting everything through, but you'd love to have those couple extra $1 million. Any questions?
I'm just curious.
Yes, Mary.
My first budget season. So what happens if one of the other schools' ovens dies in the middle of the year? What happens then? Steve finds the money?
Yeah.
I've learned to point to him.
We do have funds for extraordinary instances like that,
Yeah.
yes. So this is based on what we think.
Yeah. That's, I
And
was
what we've
wondering if
studied,
there was like
yeah. Yeah.
a reserve somewhere.
Cold lunches.
Yeah.
Ask the Walton Pack.
Yeah. Please
But
don't
we
ask
have
about it.
periodically, I'll get inside with the ovens and such, they do break down and they do get repaired.
Yeah.
This is just brand new, because you can only go so long.
Yeah, no, it was just the example I came up with, but something that all of a sudden.
The parking lot improvements, they're kind of vague. Can you be a little more specific?
Now I need your help.
The parking lot improvements, generally for the past X number of years, probably more than 30, we had not done any parking lot improvements. And we've started to do that. We have some money from this year. We did, obviously, the Greenwood School, the back and the front. And so we just keep expanding that. You look at the back out here of the high school, potholes just keep breaking out, so we'll probably tackle that one this year. But it's a general thing. We'll look at the worst areas come July, and then we'll tackle one of them. But you don't get that's not gonna go a long way. The Greenwood School took all of the money one year to do that, so.
Any other questions?
Just
or-
thank you for your presentation,
Can I,
John.
certainly, absolutely. This was one area that we had to reduce, with the, coming down from the 2.25 down to 2. Frankly, I'd like to see more done with the parking lots. I don't recall the original number off the top of my head, but like you said, I don't know the last time we touched them, so love to see more.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sean.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the debt service fund.
Okay, we'll try to run through these pretty quickly
Yeah.
while we're waiting for so the school department can get ready. Every year at town meeting, we have an article that talks about how we manage our debt service. And every year, we put in about $4.2 million. This is the fund that is paid for the Woodville School, the Dahlberg School, the Senior Center, the Public Safety Building, Town Hall, field repairs out here, and what have you. And it's been a great program, all within 2.5, which has been very beneficial to the community, with the exception of the Galvin School. So we're looking to add a little bit of money to that this year to smooth out our debt service, and knowing that we may have some more items on the horizon. But this has worked very well where, money has come off as things have been paid down and money continues. So, when you think about all these buildings that we had before, we're down to owing about $7.7 million on all these existing projects. I remember a few years ago, that was a lot higher when we first did the Dahlberg and the Woodville, and the Public Safety Building to start. So all of these are going to the end, where a lot of them will be gone in fiscal year '22, which will help us move forward to some new projects. So that'll be about $4.5 million at town meeting.
So it's an
Questions?
additional 300,000. right?
Additional $300,000 in there, and you're going to see
Okay.
more added to that as we go. And it really is more of as new projects come on. And it really is paying ourselves, kind of like, taking our own capital. So I think it's important.
Any,
Downtown project will come out of that too, when we get to that.
Any questions, concerns on the debt service fund? No? Maureen, you're good? Good.
Next article is, it's really a payment in lieu of taxes program from the Municipal Gas and Light Department. They'll be transferring $891,145 to be used as if it were a tax, and the assessors will use that in setting the tax base. Yes.
I've been on the board 2 years. That amount, I don't think has gone up.
No, that went up 13,000 over last year.
Okay. It hasn't gone up?
It went about 12,000 the year before.
All right.
It never goes up as much as I'd like it, but Finance Committee spent a lot of time on that a couple of years ago and did come up with a schedule, so
That's something we can look into.
I'm certainly all in to get more from that.
That's,
It's a double-edged sword.
Absolutely. It is.
public safety building?
Yes, Public Safety Building. This will be in front of the town meeting coming up. There was a lengthy presentation here before with the police chief, fire chief, and the head of the building committee last time. This is a $8 million bonding that would handle the rebuilding of that building. I do want to thank, we did have a forum there. People actually got to take a tour, and some of you have been there before. I want to thank Ed and Maureen were there, and others have been there in the past. We do need to do something here, and each year that we don't, the price goes up because of the economy. So we'll be looking forward to hearing from the community on this. Again, this is a bonding. We'll be going through the bond, the debt service we talked about, and is within 2.5, so there's no override here. But I think just to make sure that people coming to that building are greeted in the lobby by a police officer is critical for those of you. I think a lot of you were there for the trip, so we'll do a good job this time.
It might be the only police station in the Commonwealth that
It might be.
You walk in the front door and there's nobody there,
Right.
always.
Yeah.
Right.
With all the due respect to our
Yeah.
police, I know they'd love to be there, but, yeah, it's another one overdue for a fix.
My own personal opinion on this, though, is that we've learned a lot about how to build projects now. We do it much better. I think the Galvin is a testament to that, and I think we should be judged on that, not
Sure.
what happened here years ago.
Steve, is that bond 20, 25 years roughly? Is that
25 years. Yeah.
25 years? Okay.
Steve, I think on that too, it's important to point out that the $8 million isn't just to have an officer when you're greeted.
No,
I mean, so
that's the entire
I
ball
know,
of
you're
wax, yeah.
right, but it's, and that's obviously important, but there are a number of structural deficiencies, there are a number of issues there.
Yeah.
And I think, to your point, the most important thing is that we get it right this time, because it wasn't gotten right last. And I know you've talked about that, and I know that there's going to be different oversight this go around
Yeah.
to be sure that the same mistakes that 14 years ago, built a building that is now very deficient today, just 14 years later, will not again be the case.
Right, and it'd be really exactly the same process we followed without the SBA. I'd love if there was a state agency to give us money for that, but there isn't. But we do have a project manager now. We have someone, we have an expert. We have a permanent building committee with real people of different disciplines on it that we didn't have before. So these are things that have changed. So it's a much, and you can see the Galvin and the wonderful job that was done, so.
Because the taxpayers are expecting to have this go
Exactly,
around, and
exactly.
they need it.
Any other questions on that? Okay. So we have the fire department.
Fire department efficiency, that is, it's the exact same as last year, 165,000. We did address that in the budget this year. This includes the fact that, hey, we continue to keep both fire stations open. At times, we need to bring in people on overtime. We have had 2 people out for a while at the fire department, both of which are no longer with the fire department. So that certainly helps us in backfilling and having actually people that will be able to work and help us out there. So I hope not to come back with an article like this again next year.
Questions, comments on Article 9? Nothing? Okay. And senior tax
Yeah,
exemption.
this is actually a very exciting article,
Yeah.
I think. And it was in your packet, and it was something that this board made very clear in the fall, actually earlier than that for years, is that it's very important to a lot of board members, and really to all of us, that we find a way to allow seniors in particular to remain in their homes, in a time of higher taxes. And in working with Victor Santinello, our assessor, who's done a great job with this, this is a program that he, kind of tailored for us, but it's been used in Wayland, Sudbury, and also in Reading. And basically what it does is it allows people that qualify for the state senior circuit breaker income tax credit, which is now up to $1,000 a year, okay? People that qualify for that, we would also match that against your real estate taxes here in Wakefield. So there's a state criteria you're gonna need to meet, and that if you did do that, we would offer up to 100% match of that, and that amount, whatever that cost would be redistributed along the rest of the residential tax rate. So if 150 people took advantage of this in Wakefield, and the number will be between, I think, 150 and 200, that's what we're estimating, then for the average taxpayer in that group, and I would include myself in there, that would add about $20 to your tax bill to allow someone annually to remain in their home. I frankly think I'm very excited about it. I think it's something the board really made as one of their goals, and I think that it certainly is going to help out a lot of people. You have to have been a Wakefield owner for the last 10 years, so you can't just move in to take advantage of this. At least we're looking at, have no other significant assets. So if you have $1 million trust fund somewhere that you're hiding, that's not fair. And you have to apply with the Board of Assessors. So I think this is a pretty exciting venture the board is taking, myself.
Brian?
Yeah, I think it's great. I was actually at Brightview yesterday talking to residents, and I think the steps we've taken over the last 5 or 6 years, and now it's always nice to see continuing going forward for seniors in our town, adopting our assisted living bylaw in 2012, and then amending it in 2014, so Brightview could actually offer independent living, which was, I'm glad they did, because so many people have taken advantage of it. But just seeing the people who have grown up and raised families in this town that are now residents of Brightview already. It's only been open a matter of months, and they're already there and living and just happy, and the place is beautiful. People haven't been there. But that's exactly what our intent was with something like that, was how do you allow people who call Wakefield home stay in their home, not be forced out by their changing health or age. And I think that was wonderful. But we did talk also about the fact that people who aren't quite yet ready to move into a Brightview, that really enjoy the independence of their own home, making it affordable to them. And so what we're doing is taking, a state law that offers $1,000. I don't know why the number is $1,070. It's 1070.
Yeah.
So $1,070, direct state tax credit through a state program, and matching it dollar for dollar to double it for the valued people of Wakefield who would like to stay here and would love to find a way to allow them to stay here. So kudos to all of us and the people of our town for recognizing that and for taking those steps. I think it's just too important, and I think it's great.
Victor was actually one of my first conversations after being elected onto the board, and I talked to him about this specifically, and Reading was kind of the test case for it at the time. He'd done that for a few years, successfully so, because I said, what can we do? And he said, well, this is one option that wasn't quite ready for prime time in Wakefield at that time, about a year ago, obviously is now. So I think that this is a good opportunity for our seniors to be able to age in place.
It's great. We talked about it with Phyllis for a long
yeah.
time, wanting to do something more.
Sure.
So we knew this was coming down the pike, and I think Steve and Victor did a great job. And it's also good people have to qualify through the state, so we don't have to work at qualifying people. So if they qualify for the state, right? So the state will vet that, and then hopefully we do have up to 200 people. I mean, that would be great. It's going to affect all of our tax bills here, and an extra $20 a year is something many of us can manage to keep our elderly neighbors beside us in their homes. It's great.
Well put. Okay, so Rail to Trail.
It's another exciting one that we
Very exciting.
Been talked about. The Rail to Trail is at the 25% design phase. And really what that means is that the basic horizontal and vertical alignments of the trail work to a certain extent. And that's a Mass Department of Transportation design term. Director Stinson and I have been in numerous meetings in the state to talk about this, numerous meetings with our design team at World Tech Engineering over the last number of years, numerous meetings in Linfield to talk about the Rail to Trail. They do let Rick and I across the border. We get a little armed guard to take us in there, and they leave us alone. No, but this is something exciting, and all that this article will do is will authorize the town, but the town will authorize the board to enter into the agreement with MBTA to have a long-term lease for the track. It's not designing the trail, it's not doing anything else, it's just lets us say to Mass DOT, Wakefield is behind this, which I think it is, everything that I've heard. There's a lot of work to do. There is no actual permanent design yet that's going to come. I gave you a couple of teasers in there talking about screening and fencing and potential parking across from the Galvin School, but this is all just sketches at this point. This is not designed yet. So all of this will do is to allow us to go forward, because Mass DOT wants to see, hey, that we're serious before they're going to spend any more time actually going through this. There are some challenging sections of this going through the Reedy Meadow, which I think will actually also be some of the most beautiful part of this, going through the meadow in there. So those are things that they're working on. I would say that we're working very well with our compatriots in Linfield. just last week, just last week, Rick and I attended a session there, and it was actually very much like the public session we had here. It broke out into groups. People were actually talking about concerns that they had along the rail, and but actually being very productive. So I was very happy to see that, because we've had a couple of meetings like that here. So, long time coming. This is just another step. This is not obligating us to anything at this point, just authorizing, town is authorizing the board to bring it back, and there is no money attached to this at this time.
So we're not spinning our wheels.
We're not spinning our wheels yet.
Okay.
We will be, hopefully.
Bad joke. Any comments? Okay. So, Steve, did you want to still?
I can very quickly do the Northeast Focus.
Just so that-
School department wants to come up, then they can be ready to roll. Northeast Vocational School, or all vocational schools, this is one of our budget items. I would actually need a vote on this. We're recommending an increase in this budget of $44,841. And these are because there are going to be 2 additional students at the vocational school, now for a total of 68. We also have students attending the Minuteman and Essex North Shore. We will not know any of these actuals until the first day of school. So we base it on what we know now. So this budget did go up a little bit because we do know there are 2 extra students at the vocational school. I think the VOC has done a good job on their budget over the years. They've been very helpful to the town. We do a lot of police training up there. They actually, at this board's insistence over the years, actually got into the GIC. They were in Master Medical, and I probably wasn't too popular over there when I went there to meetings, but that's too bad. It ended up saving us money. So we're looking for $1,227,468. That number may go up or may go down depending on enrollment.
So it's all based on enrollment, the
Yeah.
changes, so.
Exactly.
So you need a vote.
I need a vote on
So
that one, yeah.
Can we have a motion to,
I can make a motion to accept the vote budget.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm done.
Okay, so next, last but not least, by any means, Dr. Smith, do you want to take over? Absolutely. Thank you for all, coming tonight.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm all choked up just seeing you guys all here, so.
It's going to be a little bit longer than the vocational budget, but
I thought so.
hopefully not too
That's what we saved you for last.
So thank you to Doug Lyons, my assistant superintendent, and Michael Piffling, my business manager, for joining me and maybe helping out with any Q&A. I'm also joined by 2 school committee members, Chris Callanan and Greg Liakis. They both served on the school committee subcommittee for finance and facilities, and we're just great partners in this work this year. So I'll start my presentation with a quote, and this came from the Boston Globe article that was actually about Marine on February 2nd. You may recognize it, but I do believe that excellent schools are the hallmark of any community, and so I was just really thrilled to see this quote about Wakefield and what's really attracted young families here, and that they started off with strong schools. I couldn't have been more pleased to see that quote. So our budget is really exclusively driven by our core values, our vision, our mission, and our strategy. That's how we determine our budget priorities each year. You may be familiar with our vision, our mission, but in the mission, there are 3 significant objectives. One is high-quality instruction, a second is rich and challenging curriculum, and a third is educational experiences that meet the individual needs and interests of our students. So I'm not going to take a lot of time on the strategy because I think actually most of you are pretty familiar with it already, but that first objective is really about quality teaching as our investment in our educators. And in this, the statements that are underlined in this, the 3 initiatives under each objective are where the budget priorities fell this year. So you can see that building capacity under high leverage instructional practices is an important piece of the budget. Moving on to our investment in quality teaching tools for our teachers to work with students. These are the 3 initiatives in that area, and the underlined ones are the ones that really found their way as a budget priority. This year, both our continuation of working on creating standards-aligned common curriculum and also digital tools to enrich and personalize learning for children. And then finally, our third objective of our strategy is individualized student learning. This is our investment in our kids. We really place some value in our budget priorities this year around whole child development and also our ability to meet the diverse academic and/or social emotional needs of our students. I think before we get into the FY19 budget recommendation, you know, we should continue to reflect on whether or not our investments are making a difference. This community has invested significantly in education in the last few years. And so I just wanted to highlight some of our student performance outcomes from the most recent state assessment. And they're really, they're pretty strong results. And so I think we can see that a lot of the investments we're making in our schools are really beginning to pay some dividends. So you can see here that our 7th grade students scored the 3rd highest growth percentile in the Middlesex League, only behind Winchester and Lexington. It's impressive. Wakefield Memorial High School achieved a level 1 accountability rating. That was the 4th school in Wakefield to achieve that honor in the past 2 years. Our high school joins Lexington, Winchester, Melrose, and Arlington as the only level 1 high schools in our 12-member Middlesex League. And the high school scored the 2nd highest performance level and the 3rd highest growth percentile in the entire Middlesex League. So those are really strong outcomes. And so our investments are really beginning to make a difference here in the Wakefield Public Schools. So moving on to the budget development, we've really been in process for a long period of time. I think you can see this is just kind of a list of what we've been doing, who we've been working with. But I think the most significant change this year, or improvement, is our ongoing work in partnership with the Finance Committee. We've been meeting early and often, both with the liaisons as a small group, and also myself and my team made an appearance with the full FinCom in February to really just talk through the budget and to really make sure we were on the same page. So it's been a very productive and collaborative process. We also garnered the input from our stakeholders in a couple of ways. One were some budget feedback sessions where people came live and in person to talk to me and my team about what they are looking for. And then a second was this survey. And almost 300 people took the survey. And they had an opportunity to kind of really weigh in on where their priorities are. Red stands for our parent and community members who took the survey, and blue are the educators that took the survey. I'll just highlight that this peak here is district intervention services. This peak is K-4 reading specialists, and this peak is social emotional coordination or intervention services for kids. So you can see that there's a lot of energy around really meeting those individual and diverse needs of children. This one here is also K-4 moderate special needs, which similarly, oh, I guess maybe, oh, I'm sorry, I thought, you can't see my pointer. Here I am talking away, thinking you were able to see, and you can't see this one either. Okay, so anyway, just the high ones, most of the highest ones are around just meeting the individual needs of our students. The far right, the very farthest one on the right, is around world language curriculum, and there's been a lot of support around that. And then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth one in from the right, which is also fairly high, is the community's continued interest in reducing extracurricular activity fees. So that's pretty much what our stakeholders said. So we really took to the task of, number one, making space for any priority additions. And so we did a significant amount of work, working with making some cuts, reorganization, reallocation. How can we offset to create the space that we needed to add some priorities? And we worked super hard on that. And then our priority additions are around these bullets. The priorities really connected explicitly to our strategy, our continued focus on standards-aligned common curriculum and high-quality instruction for all students, increasing highly qualified specialized personnel to provide students with individualized academic and social-emotional support, an increase of nursing to meet the health needs of our children, valuing the arts as an integral experience in whole child development, signifying our commitment to extracurricular experiences by implementing a Phase 2 reduction in activity fees for students, and strengthening our K-12 library media centers and really getting up to date with our digital print resources. So that's really kind of where our priorities lie in the work. So you'll see that in the budget, you all have a copy of the budget book, but this kind of just breaks it down into there are just three major budget areas that we really attended to. The first is personnel costs. You may know that that's really 80% of our budget, a good 80%, maybe a bit more. The second is operational costs to really run the Wakefield Public Schools. And then the third big area of discussion and conversation this year really was around special education out-of-district tuitions, largely because those costs have been very unpredictable, and this was one of those very unpredictable years, and the fact that the state just has not been meeting its funding obligation. So just taking a look at each of those three areas in regard to increase, decrease from FY18. If you look at personnel, we're looking at an increase of 3.91% from FY18. That's including contractual obligations, new and removed positions, and we've really, looked at retirements, both known and anticipated, and that's where we landed with our personnel increase or decrease. Under operational costs, you can see we worked at balancing the best we could here. Really, the increases had to do with contracted services and instructional supplies and technology, which you kind of saw in those budget priority areas. But fortunately, we were able to balance a lot of that out with some utility savings and some other savings. So the total increase in operations is 0.21%. And then finally, special education. There's a lot of words on this slide, but I just wanted to make sure I just kind of told the story a little bit about what happened in FY18, because that really informs the budget for FY19. So we have about 3,500 students in the Wakefield Public Schools. 41 of those students attend out-of-district schools, which is, that's, students who have disabilities that require more than we are able to offer here. And so that percentage is about 1.16% of our population. That's actually comparatively low. We do quite well compared to regional and like districts. Those 41 students go to 25 different school placements based on their needs and for a range of disabilities. And so the cost of that, of those schools this year, was about $4.2 million. And from the state, we get the circuit breaker funding, and they did not meet their obligation to fund it 75% this year. Districts across Massachusetts, it's not just Wakefield, but we only received 65%. So we received $210,000 less than expected. So that was kind of our starting point this year. So we were already in a pretty tricky space. But in addition to that, we had 11 unanticipated student placements since the FY18 budget was approved. Now that's that kind of speaks to the volatility sometimes of special education. It doesn't happen every year, but it certainly happens, and we're not alone in that happening. So we prepare our budget early, approve our budget early, and then lots can happen in that time. So the cost of those unanticipated placements and other services was about $690,000. So that was a lot of money that we started in the hole this year, and we spent a lot of time in recovery mode this year. Overall, we've done well to largely recover from that. You will see a warrant article, though, at town meeting looking to utilize the Special Education Stabilization Fund. We have not had to touch that for a couple of years, but we do need it. That's what it's there for. It's kind of like that snow and ice type model, that when we have one of these years that's a little unpredictable, so you'll see a warrant article to withdraw $175,000 from the stabilization fund. That, with the other work that we've done this year, we were able to, we still have a ways to go, but we're making it. Michael's working super hard to get us to the end. But the reason that story is important is because it really kind of informs the FY19 budget. So even just at the outset, we're looking at $573,000 that needs to be part of the FY19 budget. Now, that's not the same number as the 690 because some kids will age out and come back in district, other kids will go out, so there's some movement back and forth, so it's not the exact same number, but we are anticipating about $573,000 of that needs to be built into the FY19 budget. in order to address the 11 additional placements that we had this year and whatever other movements. So in its entirety, that's a 1.42% increase based on just special education costs alone. So in summary, here is the increase-decrease by those three areas. So I just thought this might be a helpful way to kind of look at the budget, to kind of really understand where we are and where we landed. So the personnel increase is at the 3.91%. Our operational costs, a modest increase of 0.21, and then that out-of-district tuition piece is a 1.42% increase. So the net total of the increase from FY18 to FY19 is 5.54%. I added this slide, and we've had a lot of discussions with the Finance Committee and with the School Committee around the difference between equality and equity, because when we start talking about special education, sometimes it can be a really hard topic. The out-of-district placements are very expensive, but it's important to know that equity is really about every child getting what he or she needs to be able to access the curriculum, to be able to access their learning, and that looks different from every child. So every child doesn't get the same thing. We give the supports or the resources that students need to be successful. And so when we get into some of this tricky space, I just want to make sure that we're clear that we're really just working hard to give all kids what they need, and just an important piece of the conversation. I thought this visual was kind of instructive in that area. And then finally, this last slide is just the preliminary governor's budget for Chapter 70. It's looking like about a $69,000, almost $70,000 increase in Chapter 70. That wasn't a lot, maybe a little disappointing. I would have hoped for more, but that's still a preliminary number. But I just wanted to make sure people were aware of what was there. And so finally, I just always like to have a slide of our students and their working. This was a year ago, just in regard to how well the Wakefield Public Schools are doing, really on the map. The Commissioner of Education came to Wakefield for the first time, really in history, came and visited the Wakefield Public Schools just about a year ago and spent time with our students at Doll Bears. They shared their writing, so it was kind of exciting. So that's a snapshot of the FY19 budget. You all received a much more thorough budget book, but I think that overview, I hope, gives you sort of some ideas, and then we're very happy to take any questions or feedback from the group.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Smith. That was great. Everyone's done a great job. Lots in the book. I know Brian has some questions. I was surprised.
Yeah. No, I don't even know that they're hard. I just like to make sure I'm informed. First of all, I love the presentation, so thank you for that. Steve, I said I love the presentation, so just saying. The school department is teaching you.
They always do.
Hey, just a couple of kind of points of clarification. And so you said that the 1.16%, and there's no hard questions here, or tricky things. The 1.16% was comparatively low. What is the compare? We half, or is it, are there other towns typically 5%, or is it more 1.5%?
No, not quite that dramatic. I think probably closer to, if we're at 1.16, I think about 1.5 to 2.0.
Okay. All right, so it's not like we're half. So we're,
yeah.
I would put that
a couple of ticks underneath, but still fairly significant. Most of the school districts are very close together. There's no big outliers.
It doesn't sound like we're, okay,
yeah.
that's what
but
I was.
We're on the low end of it, which is
but,
good. It means we're working hard to keep kids in district.
Yeah, okay, and then what exactly, just trying to, so when we have what you called an unanticipated placement, at what point do you anticipate a placement? What makes one unanticipated? Like, I think we're going through a budget process. You know who is it people who move here or something is discovered mid-year, or what does something become unanticipated?
First of all, just in a direct answer, 3 were move-ins, so people do move into Wakefield.
Yep.
So that's an example of an unanticipated. But what maybe an important point is that in the school department budget over the last few years, we have been budgeting for what we know. So we have, we're not padding the budget at all with cases where we think someone might end up going out. And we do have some knowledge that some things are kind of in the works, might be a student who might be struggling, and the team might be meeting to talk about, what other strategies, what do we need, to add to try to help the child be successful or whatever it might be. So while we know that some of these kind of, stories are playing out, until we actually have the information that a student is going out and we know where they're going and how much it's going to cost, and that's all been determined, we're not padding the budget with guesswork, I guess.
Yeah.
So at any given time in the school year, I think it would be fair to say that there are a number of cases that, we're working on. I don't know if that answers the question.
That's
but
fair.
yeah.
I think the answer is it's, you can't know for sure, and
Right.
and that's I think that's fair.
It's all done through the team process, and it's a very specific process.
Yeah, and are we? Every year though, don't special education costs exceed what we expected them to cost every year? And is there?
not
What I'm getting at
yeah.
is there a trend? I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just suggesting that maybe there's a trend that there's what you know, and every year can expect an additional 7.5%.
So
we
that
just
is
fire
a
that.
great question,
And I wouldn't
because-
call that padding. I would call that, just to be clear, padding is
the
almost
difference
doing
between
yourself a
padding and
disservice.
forecasting,
It would
right?
be smart.
So I think, in answer to your question, though,
Yeah.
that is what's so challenging about the special education situation, is it can be very volatile. So 2 years, for the last 2 years, we have not, and maybe Michael could answer some of this question with maybe some numbers or some percents, but, it's been very stable. But on any given year, we can have a volatile kind of a year. So it's not very predictable, and it doesn't even go in a pattern that you could really follow. So you could make attempts at forecasting, but it would require us to, the best way I can describe it is maybe pad the budget a little bit with the maybes that could happen and might happen. But I think
Yeah.
we've really committed to just a very transparent process, and having the stabilization fund for those times when things are a little bit volatile. But either of you guys can weigh in on this.
I think one of the ways that we work with our forecasting is that we do use circuit breaker. We budget circuit breaker typically on what we received the current year. So this year we received 1.365. Last year we received 1.325. So we budgeted this year, the year before, we budgeted this year at 1.325, I believe, which was last year's actual. Had we gotten 75% of circuit breaker reimbursement, we would have gotten an extra $210,000 from the state.
Yeah.
That is kind of our emergency fund to offset some of these placements. Obviously, this year is an extraordinary case. I think every year, if we got in the 210, we probably could have made up 100,000, 150,000 through some other areas, and we may not have been talking to you on a normal year about this.
Yeah.
But because it was probably 2 to 3 times what we really thought would have happened, that's, I guess, why we're here tonight.
Yeah.
Or not why we're here, but why we're having this
Yeah,
particular
yeah. I
conversation
get
at
it,
this
I get it.
moment. Otherwise, we would have just been in here talking about our budget for this year, and maybe we wouldn't have been at 554 this year also, because we can no longer predict or even come close to predicting what the state's going to do with circuit breaker.
So that was actually my next question. I'm sorry, Peter. I have this, and then was one comment at the end. So just what do we do about so the state doesn't fund the circuit breaker and says, oh, just kidding, not going to give you all the money. We kind of hinted we might be there for you. You better figure it out on your own. Who do we send our next resolution off to?
So, I'm not sure we have time for that tonight, but, the Massachusetts.
Nice job.
We have time.
The Massachusetts
ahead.
Association of School Superintendents, along with a large majority of the state senators and state representatives, have sent numerous letters to the governor, stressing how important it is to fund this. And I think Mr. Mayo may be able to connect the dots a little better for us on this one. But there is talk that they're going to move that 65 that's currently right now up, but we won't know that before town meeting. That's
Yeah,
not going
no,
to be
understood.
acknowledged. So it could go to 70, it could go to 73, it could go to 75. I'm sure it has a lot to do with what the state's revenues are this year. So the other part of this is that I believe the Department of Ed holds back a percentage or some dollar amount from circuit breaker for extraordinary relief, which we did apply for but did not receive. you have to get 20, your circuit breaker claim has to be 25% above in order to even qualify to get in the door. And we were somewhere right around 20%. So it showed that we had a need, but they say the local LEA, the local education authority, should be able to pick up the first 25%, and then extraordinary relief kicks in for those really bad cases.
So wouldn't that suggest that you underfund the budget every year and then hit over 25% and go get your disproportionate share
No,
from the
it's
state?
actually a worksheet that we have to fill out on every student.
Oh, all right,
And,
I'm trying.
With
All
the
right.
students' costs, if the students' costs exceed 4 times the per pupil average
Okay.
for the state, which is about $44,000, that's when circuit breaker kicks in. So we pick up the first 44,000, the town of Wakefield, and then anything above that, we
Okay.
got this year 65%, but state law is we should get 75% of that number.
Okay. Is there some town that's getting, apart from that extraordinary situation, in the regular circuit breaker budget process, the cuts, if you will, are pro rata? They're across the board. Everybody
Yeah.
suffers. There's no, you know.
It's not like Chapter 70 where, I don't want to pick a town, but, maybe Lawrence is getting close to 100% Chapter 70, and Wakefield's getting 17%. It's not like that. Everybody is leveled at 65% this year.
Okay, all right, that's good. Hey, my last thing is, I did like your, and I said I have one comment, just, I did hear your graphic there of the 3 students that had, basically different needs, and I have a full appreciation for that. That comes from federal law, right? That you have to provide everybody a free and appropriate education.
That's right.
And courts have interpreted appropriate is appropriate for the child, not what's appropriate for the populace or for society at large. So I think it's a good point of view to point out that that's the law, that's what we're required to do, and that's your mandate, is to figure out what's appropriate for each child and then deliver each child that. For most of them, the general curriculum, well, for if I can do the math really fast, 98.84% of them, the traditional curriculum works, and for 1.16% of the students, you have to come up with something that's different, that's appropriate for them.
Right.
And it's costly, and it just is what it is. So I think you're doing the right thing by supporting them and by spending, it is money well spent. I have a lot of just personal experience with this issue, including, fighting for money for people in my own family, not my immediate family, but others. And so I know the process. I know all about IEPs and all that, and I just have a little bit of a soft spot there for that. So so good for you, and I'm all for it. So
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Brent. Ian?
Thank you for the booklet was great. It answered all details of all aspects of the budget. To speak off of what I was going to say, mimics Brian, that the ADA mandates that you provide the services to make students not better than their peers, but that they're acting equal. And I'm in charge of disability services at the law school. So I work with this every day, trying to manage plans for law students to make them be able to succeed like their peers. When I think of this budget, I like to think of it almost bifurcated, that there's the special ed part, because you cannot control that. And you cannot control the out-of-placement districts, the out-of-district placements. And I know, there's a lot of talk about it, but I also have some good friends whose children are in those out-of-district placements who want that. So it's not as if you're saying, shh, all set. You try to do your best, and at some point, we just don't have the resources to handle some of these students' needs. So there's going to be some squawking at town meeting about the 5.54, but in my mind, bifurcating that 1.42 out makes it really close to what you are trying to do to keep it to the 4. And I think it's critical, because under the ADA, under the federal law, we cannot change those numbers. So I think you've done a really good job in keeping the budget to a very responsible and great budget. And I loved reading the strides that the students have made, and as I'm sending one of my children back, who will complete his senior year in Wakefield. So yeah, I'll have a Wakefield student, and so that was exciting for me. I'm not sending him back; he's choosing to come back. But anyways, I was excited to see that that those numbers academically are strong. So well done.
Thank you.
So great job, and you're going to be leaving us, I understand?
I am retiring at the end of the school year.
Thank you for your
So
service
it's a great deal of
to the
emotion.
town.
As you know, I've been here for 32 years,
Yep.
and I have loved every minute of it,
Yeah.
my commitment to Wakefield.
Well, thank you for your service to the town.
Thank you.
Freedom of Information Act, I have a teenager in the school system, so I should say that out front. So 41 students go out of district at roughly $103,000 apiece. I'm not saying cut back in any of those services in any way, shape, or form. You know, those kids, need help, and they deserve every, ounce of help they get. Is there any thought of maybe insourcing some of that to maybe they don't have to ship these kids, out of town? And
So-
doing that in-house?
It's actually, it's even more complex than dividing it somewhat
yeah.
equally. There could be an outplacement that costs over $400,000 for one child. But the range of disabilities is significant, from a child who's medically fragile. We have some students who are transported to school by ambulance, and have to have medical personnel on the ambulance to go with them to school. So like those cases might be, on the more expensive end, where others, not quite as expensive as that. So it's really a range. I think what we do is we try to provide as much as we can in district, God bless you. Because our goal is that whenever possible, every child should learn in his or her neighborhood school with their peers in their neighborhood. That's the best possible situation. But when it comes to disabilities and it comes to the free and appropriate education, as Mr. Falvey said, we have to make sure that every child is getting what they need.
It's a fine
And
line.
Typically, the students that are outplaced really have significant disabilities that might be more than we are able to, kind of insource, if you will.
Sure. Thank you.
First off, Dr. Smith, thank you for your service to the town. I mean, I know that you've been an example for many, and I speak to many people who, had you when they were going through the system, so thank you for that. I wanted to ask a couple questions. I know that there was a lot of discussion recently about the certified reading specialists, or the lack of sufficient certified reading specialists within the district. The district intervention services line is, to many, underfunded. And it seems that there's concern about that as relates to spending the money in town versus going out. And case in point, I think we're spending around or just over $250,000 for 5 students to go to a program, Orton Gillingham, like one of the top reading programs. And I know that we've added one reading specialist at about $75,000. There's a commitment to do so. But it seems like when you do the math, it would still be more cost beneficial to add a position within the town, since we're paying out over $250,000 for just 5 students. And I know that includes transportation, but I don't think even all 5 of them are being transported. So that is a lowball number ultimately. Where are you on that? And have you thought further about expanding the offering in-house?
Yeah, so I think for those who may not be privy to what Mr. Dabrowski's talking about, so we added a line in the school department budget in FY18 called a district intervention services line. It's something that I added as a superintendent of schools, not something that had ever existed before, but it really kind of spoke to this need that I thought we needed to have a place where we could start to build some funding. And my thought was broader than reading to begin, certainly, where I was really just thinking about any of those individualized needs, whether it's academic or social, emotional, behavioral, which is another really kind of growing, burgeoning issue that all school districts are struggling with, not just Wakefield. So the idea of putting that line in the budget and beginning to fund it in FY18 was exactly for this purpose, to try to build our resources within district. This year we added more to it. We're up to $75,000 in the FY19 proposed budget. Just really mindful of the bottom line. We haven't gone further than that at this point, but it will certainly give us a really good start on adding further services to the district. I do think the whole kind of out of district, in district conversation is very complex. It's not as simple as saying if we were to hire 1 or 2 reading specialists, that we may avoid having a student go out, because many of our students will go out, they might have a reading disability, but they might have an array of disabilities or a more complex profile than just reading. It might make a difference. We're hoping it makes a difference. And it might be, maybe say, you know, you mentioned 5 students that might be out for reading. It might make a difference for 1, and that would be a great difference to make. So I think this year, our commitment is to utilize all of the money that we have in that line to really focus on reading intervention services, to really join. We have a team now. It's not that we don't have a team. We do have a team, K through 12, of teachers. And so we want to add to it by at least 1 FTE this year, and then really kind of dig into the data of our IEPs and kind of really plan out what does the next, 2 to 5 to 10 years look like, and where are we headed with that? Because I think we also have to look at not only reading, but we have to look at some of our other needs as well. So I do see that as a line that I'd really love to build on over the next few years. But I do want that to be driven by the data, really driven by the IEP needs. And I think you're referencing, started by referencing some folks have come forward to really advocate. They did a beautiful job. Some parents came to our budget hearing to really advocate for more reading intervention services, just great parents, very passionate, and they did a really exceptionally good job. So because they came, I asked our special education director to really spend the week doing a deep dive into our IEPs, looking at our staffing, looking at our certification, looking at all of that. She did that, got a lot of great information to us, and so I think we're off to a great start. Really looking forward to hiring at least 1 person. It might feel modest to start, but it's a great start. I think it's an efficient start, and then to continue the planning over the next few years. So.
And then if we look at, say, like post-academy, I know currently we have some synergy with Reading.
Yes.
Students coming. And looking at it, I know that Steve often tries to collaborate with other towns in terms of, utilizing resources as best we can. Why aren't we currently engaged? I understand places like Lexington or Beverly that have Landmark and why they may not be necessarily interested in post-academy per se, given their own offerings, but why aren't we promoting that more and trying to, say, reach out to, say, like Linfield, for example? Reading is a well-respected school district. They're partnered with us. Why aren't we reaching out to Linfield to try to mimic that so that we have the tuition coming in? Because as I understand it, post-academy, without that additional tuition revenue coming in, there could be some challenges going forward on that.
So that's a great question. So we actually are aggressively pursuing other partners, and so there's actually two ways that we can bring income into our post-academy. One is by adding partners. So we're in a cooperative intermunicipal agreement with Reading, so we'd love to add another partner to that, and we're really working to try to see if we can lure somebody else in, because that would certainly help us quite a bit. But we're also can bring students to tuition students in from any of the local communities. I think we have a fabulous program to offer, and we've been really trying to market it. When push comes to shove and we're competing, sometimes a much more expensive placement might seem preferable to a family if they have the opportunity. So sometimes it just comes down to we may not be able to offer residential, or we may not be able to offer certain, pricey things that another placement might offer. But I think we have a lot to offer at our post-academy, and so we are doing quite a bit of marketing to really build that. And the other piece is we do have a collaborative with SEAM, and so we do have a partnership with a bunch of regional school districts, and we do collaborate and partner around some resources, which is another way to get additional staffing when we need it. It's hard for any one of our districts to afford, certain specialists and things like that. So sometimes we'll collaborate to bring additional folks in. I don't know if you have anything to add on the post.
Just on the post. First off, they delivered all your budgets on Friday. I don't know if anybody saw it, but the post academy
The students.
students came around on Friday. You were probably all at work, but they delivered them all for you, for us. But it's a great bunch of kids. One of the things with the partnership is Wakefield and Reading were both in a situation 3 years ago, I guess, where we had a large population coming through. And if those children had gone out of district, it would have been a financial burden. Almost to your point about reading specialists, if they go out of district, they're going to cost us a couple of times more than what if we build our own program. So we built a program with Reading. I think what we really need right now is another district who's got some up-and-coming population who wants to buy into our program and partner with us. Because once you're a partner district, when it's your program, you can assign the children to go there, the students to go there. When it's not your program, like if Linfield just had one student, it may, from a business standpoint, may not make sense for them to buy into our program. And if they don't buy into their program, the parent really has a lot of say in where the child goes. When it is their program, that reduces the input. I'm not saying they have no input, but it reduces the amount of input. We have a program that's Wakefield, Reading, Linfield. If they were to join in, it's their program. They don't necessarily have to offer an out-of-district service because they do provide the services within their own program. So I think one of the things that we need to find is one of those surrounding districts that has a population coming through that it would make business sense for them. And this is the business guy speaking, not the instructional services team over here, where they're gonna say, we offer a great program, or we have one of the best programs in the area. That is so true, but from the business standpoint, which seems to be where your questions have come from, it has to make financial sense for that district to buy into our program, that they've got a couple of kids coming up. So I think that's, we're trying to target some of these different districts. But we do have some one-offs, and we've talked to Linfield about some students, and again, because they're not part of the program, the family had a lot more say in where their child went. And you have a long-standing program in Lexington called Lab. You've got Landmark up in Beverly. Those are long-standing, established, well-known programs with a price tag that's 2 to 3 times ours. You've got SEAM Collaborative, which we're a member of, who has a program that's very similar to ours, but maybe only $10,000 more than our program would be. And again, it's established, it's known. So it's one of those things that we have to get ourselves known, which we are. I think we've done a great job with that, but also getting the families to understand what our program is.
And I think we've talked a lot this year with the special education director about really kind of getting parents of younger children to know about our program and invite them over and engage them in activities, because I think, to Michael's point, I think with some of these long established programs, parents might be thinking about them when their kids are little, that someday they'll go to Lab, so we want them to be thinking about post-academy. Someday, my children can go to this program that's right in this beautiful little community, they can learn how to take the T, they can participate in, so I think we're really going to try to target in our marketing some of those families with younger children.
I think one of the challenges I have in looking at this budget too is I was on Finance Committee back when there was the 4% commitment made and not been kept. And I understand that special education is an unknown. But some of the knowns, for example, you look at contractual obligations and they're at 4.14%. So on its face, that 4% number is already blown. And I think one of the biggest concerns that I have about this budget is how much it makes up of the total budget for the town. I think we're getting into this unsustainable zone. We've been fortunate in the town in recent years to have good tax revenue, a good economy, but that's not always going to be the case. And if you're looking at this, we're tracking almost 7% of compounded growth when you look at this. So Steve, this all in school, all aspects of it, what, about 60?
I'd say, yeah. We kind of go with a 1/3, 2/3.
Yeah, about 66%.
When you put in benefits and everything.
Right, when you factor everything, insurance, benefits, retirement, everything, I don't think enough people recognize that school department all in is about 2/3 of our total town budget. So if you're talking about even 1/10 of a percentage increase or differential in the school budget, that has a profound impact on the bottom line as compared with, say, Council on Aging or even police or fire, for that matter. So I know that there are collective bargaining agreements. I know that contractual obligations, and I think they're being revisited next year, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I think that if we're to have a sustainable school department that can weather not just the good times, but also the lean times, it's important that the school department think about how it's doing things to make sure that it's not setting itself up to be unsustainable. And I have great concern that if we have an economic downturn, it could mean layoffs and cutting back of programs and services and the like, because it's a fiscal reality for us. And I'm really troubled by that, and I feel like we're living a bit beyond our means right now. And I just hope that there's the due diligence and the thought put into that forward looking. I know we've had a lot of leadership changes over the years, and I recognize that. But I think it's a real issue for the townspeople, and I want to make sure that when when 66 or 67 cents of every dollar that they're paying in taxes is going to the school department, I want to make sure that they're getting that return on their investment, but also it's a sustainable investment and not one that we're just, having a good time now, but in the bad times, it's going to be really hard on our students.
I think something to kind of think about along those lines is that over these last few years, maybe 5 years, we've been in a little bit of recovery mode from some very, very lean years. So there's been a bit of a surge. During the collective bargaining process over the last 2 contracts, we've really kind of moved our faculty and our teaching staff from really at the very bottom of the Middlesex League and surrounding regional districts and DART districts in terms of what we were paying our teachers. We've now really kind of right-sized that. We're up in the upper third now. And I think, so I think it's been important work that we've done when we've been able to do it. I think to your point, can we always do that? No, I think that we've got ourselves in a much better position, which is why we're seeing a lot of results in the Wakefield Public Schools right now. Because I'll always say that the #1 resource, the most important resource we have, is the teacher in the classroom. And we want to attract and keep the highest quality teachers possible for the Wakefield Public Schools. That's really what the quality is all about. So I think over this last maybe 5-year period or so, we've really gained some momentum in that area. But when you talk about the 7%, part of what Mr. Dabrowski is talking about is that when we enter into a collective bargaining agreement, it's not just the cost of living raises, but it's also the fact that teachers have steps and lanes and columns. And teachers are required by state regulation to earn a master's degree within 5 years, and it's really about that highly certified staff. So people are moving over columns as well, which is part of that cost. But I think this morning at our meeting, joint meeting with the Finance Committee, we had some of this conversation, just kind of, kind of that longer term forecasting, and some of the things you talked about is exactly what we talked about today.
Good.
How we can be really, really mindful of that. And I'm very pleased at where we are and what we're able to deliver. We have just an incredible teaching force right now, and that it really took some time to really be able to attract good people, to develop them, to retain them here, and not let them get away. So we've got a really strong force. We're in a good place, but certainly we need to be mindful over time because the times aren't always going to be good.
Just my final comment is, I really like the way, and I raised this a meeting or 2 ago, I really like the way that you guys have worked with FinCom and have had a lot of these discussions by the time you got here. And I feel like a lot of our budgets we just kind of approved, but I think that this system, and I know that you've changed it this go around, the sense I've gotten from you is that it's working much better because of
Really
it.
well.
And I like that, and so to the extent that we're able to do that with other departments, when we have liaisons and the like, I think it's a better way of doing things because we're more informed understanding the origins of the budget and how you arrived at this place. I mean, you had plenty of meetings and the like, and I think that's a good model that could be followed in other parts of the town government. Thank you.
People are moving to Wakefield for the schools, first and foremost. And, to Ed's point, I kind of understand, the fiscal responsibility aspect of it. But we're seeing bidding wars, and what that is doing is increasing our tax base, and what that is, increasing our overall revenue for the town. So if we had underperforming schools here in Wakefield, we wouldn't see those bidding wars and that tax rate grow. So I'm kind of looking at it from a different perspective. But thank you again.
Just a quick question. Will this slide presentation be something that you do at the town meeting? Is that something?
So, I really feel like this year, it's really important for me to kind of present it, I think, and the way you kind of suggested. It was very intentional that I kind of chunked it out in those 3 big pieces
Right.
of personnel, operational costs, and special education to help people understand. I don't want to be too lengthy,
Sure.
so I'll try to be as succinct as I can, but I'd like to message some of that this year to kind of help people understand.
And I think it's a great idea. If you spoke to Ann about it too, because it's a complex issue, and I think if people just go to the town meeting, not that they only go, to the town meeting and don't know anything about the schools ahead of time, but if they just show up, and it's supposed to be 4 and it's 5.54, and next thing you know, it's why is that? It's not like an easy answer that you can have. This is very good. Actually, can you go back 2 or 3 slides to that one where it broke down that 5.54? I think it was right there. So.
I think that tells the story,
It does.
maybe
I mean,
better,
it's a lot better than, I think, because it's such a controversial issue every year, since it is 2/3 of the budget, the town's budget. This makes it a lot easier to at least digest, and then you can spin off from each one, and discuss one individually.
So maybe this group, after you kind of digest it and think about it, if there's any feedback you have for me, to maybe email me something that you saw or didn't see, that you think it would be important for me to say at town meeting, I'd really appreciate any feedback on that.
No, it's great, 'cause I just think anything that makes it easier for the town, because, you have 300 or 400 or 500 people drop in and they hear there's an increase, it's, why is that?
Right,
So,
right.
okay, good. Yeah, thank you very much. That was great. Ann or maybe? Good. Steve? Yeah, sure, Steve.
I want to thank Dr. Smith. This is the last Selectmen's meeting I'll be with her. I want to thank you for all your work over
Thank
the
you,
years, and
Steve.
behalf of my 3 children who all went through the school system under you. So I do want to thank you for that very much. A good partnership for us and for the Mail family. A couple of things, Mike Pifferling talked about the circuit breaker. At the chamber event, I wouldn't let our state delegation leave. In fact, there's a picture of it. Maureen has me holding them hostage to talk about circuit breaker, because over the I think they've only hit 75% once in 10 years.
Last year.
Last year. That's not fair to us. That's what we are, they're obligated, or the state is obligated. So that's probably $1 million over the last 5 years that we haven't received as a community. So that's pretty substantial. My understanding is that there is a movement for this fiscal year to get very close to 75%, and I've heard that from our entire delegation, but we won't know that probably until June 30th. And next fiscal year, a commitment to get to the 75%, so that'll be a help. The other item that we need to hit our state delegation on, and I've played with these items, these numbers for years, is on Chapter 70 funding. This is the main education funding, and I can't for the life of me understand why, in my opinion, Wakefield gets shortchanged. And I've had this conversation a number of times. They say it's the formula, and all right, it's the formula. And I'm not talking about a Lawrence or a Lowell or a Lynn or New Bedford or Fall River that gets a lot of this, a lot of Chapter 70 money because of the demographics. I'm talking about Melrose, Stoneham, Reading. And so I like to play with the numbers, and although it's gotten a little bit better, it's still not that good. If Wakefield got the same per pupil payment on Chapter 70, same per pupil, because that's the only way to measure it, in my opinion, Wakefield would receive about 2.3 million more in Chapter 70 funding if we got the same as Reading. Melrose, 1.5 million more. That's a huge number for this community. So I'm going to suggest that maybe we get our delegation in here beginning of the year and see, again, what can we do to bridge this gap? Because it is, I think we've done an amazing job as a community with the numbers we've been given. So I want to thank you guys for that.
So, can I ask a question on that? So, it almost sounds like, so we've been delivered a beating year over year, and we're just like, well, I can't wait for next year's beating. So what do we?
Well, I think the problem is,
I feel like we've failed here. So what do we do? And this, I know it's a recurring issue, but what can we do to be a little more vocal?
We can bring them and ask them to look at the formula, but the problem is that they're all voting on this. All the communities are voting on this. So what happens is every year is that, we don't refuse it. We'll give an extra $25 or an extra $50 per student across the board, across the state. But that.
Oh, they never fix the
the
initial
actual
disparity.
problem, because if you're a rep in a community that's getting more, how are you going to vote to cut yourself? So I said, well, you got to bring, and they've done a little bit, bring us up more, So that's it is a complicated.
I think when I first got here, we were under 16
We
and a
were
half.
under, yeah.
Under 16 and a half, which is the
Yeah.
floor. Nobody's supposed to get less than
Right.
16 and a half.
Yeah.
We were at like 16.
Yeah.
So we were a couple of years where they doubled up our number. So if they gave everybody 25, we got 50.
Right.
There were like 4 or 5 districts that were in that boat, and
But
they
we should have got 100.
right.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and more than that. But until they
Yeah.
fix the formula, it's really
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. And to get the people behind fixing the formula, you're going to upset a lot of districts.
Yeah.
Fixing the formula, and I guess it's politics. It's,
Yeah,
it's
I mean, does it
truly
have to do
politics,
with the way
right?
our districts are cut through Wakefield versus having?
I don't know if that's part of it. I can't say.
I think so.
I can't say that. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
No, really. No, I'm telling you the truth.
I don't think the formula's
I
broken
don't
because
know.
of that, but I don't think it's going to get
No,
fixed
doesn't
because
help.
of,
Yeah, it probably doesn't help, so.
But done a good job. But I do want to thank Dr.
Thank you
Smith for the
very much.
partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good night.
We'll see you at town meeting. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay, Tony, the warrant review and signing.
Again, nothing too out of the ordinary. Group insurance, a lot of local vendors that we use in town. Hart's Hardware for supplies, Fahey Tire for vehicle maintenance, school meals, pizza at the Walton, so everything in order, as it should be.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I guess matters not anticipated by the chairman within the 48 hours of the meeting. Maybe, do you want to go first?
Sure. It was a really busy weekend. There was lots of things to highlight about some of the great partnerships we have in town. I just wanted to talk about them. So the Albion Culture Exchange had a great Arts in Bloom. I was supposed to wear a little crown that I made, but I forgot it at home. But thank you to everyone that helped. Our art program in town, from the high school, from the schools onward, is just getting bigger and bigger. We dedicated a bench this weekend on behalf of WAVE to remember those lost to domestic violence, which was really beautiful. If you walk around the lake, check out the bench. And then another great partnership that we have in town, it's National Library Week. And we have a great library in town. It's one of the reasons I actually moved here was I love the library. So visit our library and say hi to the librarians this week if you get a chance.
Ann?
No, I just spent 6 days in a rink. I
Wow.
can barely
So you can do
complete
twice
a
as many
sentence.
next time.
How
I'll
did
tell
you do?
Paul.
We made it to the finals of nationals. The
Wow.
second-ranked team in the country.
Awesome.
We lost to
Fabulous.
Minnesota. Good
Kudos.
game. Yeah, it was very good. But
Great.
no, I also, our discourse can get, interesting, and I hope I wasn't disrespectful to Ed at all. And I think we can be non-unanimous in a vote and still be a complete board. And I also did what Ed did on several votes in the years that I've been on, when I haven't been psyched 100% about the vote, but I've put my vote as yes for unanimous. So I think we have a civil board. It's nice to have a board where people ultimately respect even our differing opinions.
Agreed. Ed?
This was a busy weekend. This past weekend, congratulations to the Greenwood School and the Gator Gallop. That was a great success. Got me moving around the lake. Also, to Maureen's point, there was a dedication of a bench on Saturday, and that was it was very moving because it remembered those lost in Wakefield and just in general to the epidemic of domestic violence, which we do not speak enough about. It's on the Upper Common. It overlooks the lake, and it has a really nice poem. And if you have a moment, it's a nice point to just kind of stop and reflect and recognize. It's a living tribute, so I would encourage you to check it out. Thank you.
Tony?
My family and I had a great time at the International Fest at the Galvin on Friday night. A lot of fun food and dancing and things. And secondly, just real quickly, it is election season. You may have seen people out there holding signs. And I just give credit to a lot of the people that are first-timers for just getting their name out there, because it is a lot of work. And, I was there myself.
I remember.
That's your best line all night, Peter.
That's when I waited till the end. Brian saved me.
No, nice job on all the, almost all unanimous votes.
Almost, I know. I was a
Good
couple
effort,
short, but it's my fault too.
I touched on it before, just it's worth reminding or saying again. Was in Brightview yesterday with residents, a few of us were, and just what a great facility that is. And again, just the commitment that this town makes to our seniors, I think, is second to none. I have, my own mother is, she's 82. She lives in the house I grew up in and is trying to figure out, it's getting to be time to make a decision, and doesn't, she's looking at a place in the next town over. And I think that's something that hinders her decision, because there isn't necessarily a good option locally. So, we do right by all of our people in this town. The budget we just looked at, the people who have special education needs, the folks that have special needs of our seniors, from the tax credit we talked about, to Brightview, to, you know, our senior center. We do take care of everybody throughout the course of their life here in Wakefield, and literally everybody. I think we do a good job of representing, you know, the entire population as shown by our name change as well. Again, one small step, but a big message that it really matters to us. So, you know, I'm proud of us, and I am proud of the discourse tonight. We have disagreements. Nice job, Ed, coming through with a unanimous vote at the end. That means a lot. That's it's really important, and you know, greatly appreciated. So, thanks.
I think we have a great board, actually. It really is terrific. You can't always agree on everything every time. Steve, do you have anything that you wanted to? jump
Very,
in?
very quickly, there is an age-friendly survey out, speaking of looking at all ages. It's online, it can be picked up at the senior center and at town hall. This was something from the age-friendly community when Judah Luciano was here a few months ago, so please take the time to take it out. And that is going to help us kind of, you know, put forward programs that we think people want. Also, the select woman Butt brought this up a couple of weeks ago with the AARP. There may be some grant opportunities, so we're looking to them as well. So you brought that up. So
Nice.
thank you. I do appreciate that. I'm working on remote participation. Been talking with some of our fellow communities that have had it, that are offering it. So something I'll be coming back at a future board meeting with to talk about that with the board as you requested. And I do want to thank you all. I know the budget is a hard, onerous time. There's a lot of time you put into it, so I do want to thank you for putting in the hours and looking through that. Thank you very much.
Tom, anything down your end of the woods?
Just one thing, the board has previously approved Steve's new employment contract. I have it. I would like to pass it around. I'd appreciate it if each selectman would sign.
Steve would appreciate it, too.
Yes.
Right. I just had a couple things. Friends of Lake Quantapowhat, jump in, Maureen, if you, being a member. But spring cleanup is this Saturday, 4/14, I think, at 9 a.m. at the gazebo. 4/22 is Earth Day cleanup, parking lot at Lakeside Inn. And 5/23 is the annual dinner meeting at the Bear Hill Country Club at 6 o'clock. The speaker there is going to be DPW Stormwater Manager Claire Moss, I believe. I just had one final thing that came up when I saw the dedication going on. I drove by, couldn't stop, but we discussed the benches a long time ago, and I think it's a wonderful thing. I'm not taking away from anyone's bench, that it's great tribute. But didn't we discuss this before about we wanted to see something happening, like we wanted to review or talk about benches before they went in, or?
Yeah, this
did
was an
that come up?
existing bench.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
I was just
that was
curious.
why
I
we
just,
did it that way. You're absolutely
it
right,
just
and that's
jogged my
still
memory that I
forthcoming.
know we were very sensitive about it, and
Yeah.
I just,
Counting of the name benches out there, we have no idea.
right, I just remembered, is that still in place, or, okay, so it's in place, okay, just in case someone calls me and says, you know. Yeah, thank you very much for making it very enjoyable today. And we miss Paul at Pink. He will be back, and
Where is
someone.
Paul?
He's at, well, we can't really, we're not at liberty to say. He's somewhere with a pink shirt, where Ed's wearing that in commemoration of, or dedication to Paul. I think a Pink concert, but we won't say that.
I move that we close
Second.
the meeting.
I move we also, all in favor?
Aye.
I also think we should sign this with Steve, too.
Yeah, we did.
Don't-
We can
don't
sign
leave.
it after.
Nice job.
My leg.